Chapter 9:14. Beaten so badly the sword can't be withdrawn. Chapter 9:14. Beaten so badly the sword can't be withdrawn. The moment he said that, everyone present was shocked. Disdain. Extreme disdain. Many cultivators looked at Su Zimo as though they were looking at a dead man. Jian Wuzong's eyes were first filled with rage. However, he suddenly laughed and nodded repeatedly at Su Zimo thereafter. Very good, this is the edge that a sword cultivator should have. The more that is the case, the more I admire you. At that moment, Jian Wuzong did not realize who he was talking to. Or rather, none of the cultivators in Wind Cloud City knew the true identity of the green-robed man. In Thousand Demon Valley, Su Zimo could fight against mid-level fiend demons head-on. Mid-level fiend demons were equivalent to void reversions of the cultivation world. Although Jian Wuzong was third on the phenomenon ranking, he was still a nascent soul. Furthermore, the phenomenon ranking had just ended and his cultivation realm was only at early-stage nascent soul. Notwithstanding the fact that Su Zimo was already at peak late-stage nascent soul. Even if this was 100 years ago, when Su Zimo had just entered nascent soul realm, he could suppress Jian Wuzong with ease. Jian Wuzong said slowly, "How about this? Let's spar. If you can take 3 of my sword strikes, I'll let you guys leave this place." Pausing for a moment, Jian Wuzong continued, "If you can't take it, you will have to follow me obediently and not go against my will in the future. Do you dare to take the gamble? 3 sword strikes is enough." That's right. Given Jian Wuzong's combat strength, even number 4 of the phenomenon ranking might not be able to take 3 of his strikes if he were to attack with his full strength. That green-robed cultivator will definitely lose. Everyone viewed themselves as objective bystanders and discussed. The soaring feather sect cultivator looked at the man beside him and asked softly, "Senior brother, what do you think of this bet?" Jian Wuzong's sword is very fast. 3 strikes. Wu Tianyu shook his head slightly and said, "Among nascent souls, there are probably less than 10 who can receive his 3 strikes." Wu Tianyu and Jian Wuzong partook in the same phenomenon ranking and understood one another. His evaluation of Jian Wuzong was extremely high. The soaring feather sect cultivator said, "If that's the case, that green-robed cultivator will definitely lose. The 10 people that senior brother mentioned are definitely the strongest experts in the nascent soul realm and are famous throughout the world. That person is clearly not among them." "Yes." Wu Tianyu said deeply, "It's hard to say. I have a feeling that this green-robed cultivator is unfathomable and far from simple." The soaring feather sect cultivator was indifferent. "Senior brother, don't forget that he's a sword cultivator. Once they fight, he'll definitely be suppressed by Jian Wuzong. He won't win this gamble." On the long street, Nan Gongling, Lu Hanyan and Ru Xian were worried and sent voice transmissions to Su Zimo, telling him not to accept the gamble. Once lost, their little uncle master would become someone else's lackey. Neither they nor the 100 Refinement Sect would be able to take it. Furthermore, Nan Gongling and the other 2 could not see any hope of Su Zimo winning. "So, do you dare to take the gamble?" Jian Wuzong asked and smiled with a confident expression. "Ha ha ha ha." Su Zimo reared his head in laughter. "Sure. However, there's no need for 3 strikes. If you can even draw your sword in front of me, it'll be my loss." Everyone was stunned the moment his sentence was finished. It was dead silent near the long street. Although his words were extremely arrogant, everyone could hear a sense of pride and awe in his tone. Who would dare say such words in front of Jian Wuzong? Would the number 1 of the phenomenon ranking this time round, Yi Tiancheng, dare to do so? Would the number 2 of the phenomenon ranking, Yan Mo, dare to do so? There were countless nascent souls in Tianhuang mainland. Who among them would dare? Yet, someone dared to do so. "You!" Jian Wuzong narrowed his eyes with a cold glint. This time round, he was truly enraged as he said with a frosty voice, "How dare you?" "Kill!" Before Jian Wuzong could finish, he was interrupted by Su Zimo's shout. Sound Domain Secret Skill, Thunderclap Kill. After cultivating the Purple Thunder Manual, Thunderclap Kill was even more powerful than before. The surrounding cultivators felt their bodies tremble and the ground quaked as gravel flew. One could imagine what sort of impact the Jian Wuzong had to endure. That shout was like a thunderbolt from the clear skies that exploded in Jian Wuzong's ears, causing his ears to buzz and his scalp to tingle. However, for Jian Wuzong to be able to reach third on the phenomenon ranking, he was definitely not someone easy to deal with. He was experienced in combat and realized right away that Su Zimo had released a sound domain secret skill. Clang! Clang! Jian Wuzong circulated his blood qi and the sound of sword qi clanging echoed from his body. Among the super sects of Tianhuang mainland, some body-tempering sects, such as Glass Palace, Overlord Palace and Diamond Monastery, were extremely famous. In reality, Sword Sect's body-tempering technique was extremely strong as well. The process of tempering the body by tearing it with sword qi and repairing it continuously caused the body's blood qi to become extremely powerful and sharp. When cultivators of Sword Sect cultivated their bodies to their limits, their blood qi would be mixed with sword qi. Their fingers were like swords that could slice apart divine weapons with a single wave. Jian Wuzong channeled his blood qi and had just gotten rid of the negative effects of Thunderclap Kill when he felt his vision blur as a green figure crushed over. You must have a death wish. With a sneer, Jian Wuzong reached for the sword on his shoulder. He was all too familiar with that action. It could be said that the first sword technique he practiced after joining the Sword Sect was how to draw his sword. Even in his dreams, even in his sixth senses, Jian Wuzong could draw his sword right away. This had already become his instinct. However, his sword was pushed back by a pair of hands halfway through its withdrawal. Buzz! The sword hum had just sounded when it stopped. The sword was already sheathed. He was fast. However, Su Zimo was even faster. The green shadow flickered and Su Zimo was already close to him. Bang! 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 Helpless, Jian Wuzong could only fight Su Zimo barehanded. However, right after, Jian Wuzong's expression changed drastically and he almost could not help but cry out in pain. Su Zimo's body was way too strong. Jian Wuzong's fists and palms felt as though they were striking cold and hard rocks. After 2 or 3 moves, his hands were already purple and bruised. At that distance, Jian Wuzong did not even have the chance to form a dermic art. Su Zimo's attacks rained down in a flurry and were suffocating. Jian Wuzong grit his teeth and his eyes were bloodshot. He ignored Su Zimo's incoming palm and pulled out the sword on his shoulder, prepared to fight to the death. However, Su Zimo's palm swiped across his chest before he strode forward and slapped his shoulder. Clang! The moment the sword was unsheathed, Su Zimo slapped it back. You! Jian Wuzong was so angry that his body was trembling but he was helpless. He retreated continuously, wanting to increase the distance between them and draw his sword. However, Su Zimo was closing in on him like a maggot, not giving him any chance at all. In the blink of an eye, both parties had exchanged dozens of blows. During this period of time, Jian Wuzong tried to pull out his sword multiple times but was blocked by Su Zimo. As for his own hands and arms, they were already swollen and almost ruptured after colliding with Su Zimo. Despair. Jian Wuzong's heart was filled with nothing but despair. There was no chance to retaliate at all. If this continued, his bones would be shattered before he could draw his sword. He had never been reduced to such a state and lost so thoroughly in a fight. Suppression. Complete suppression. He was beaten so badly he could not withdraw his sword at all. Chapter 9:15. Train for 500 years more. Chapter 9:15. Train for 500 years more. It was forceful. It was shocking. Third on the phenomenon ranking, Jian Wuzong, the most outstanding successor of Sword Sect, could not even draw his sword in a fight. If news of this were to spread, it would definitely cause an uproar. Nan Gongling's mind was in a mess. If he had not witnessed it personally, he truly could not imagine that Jian Wuzong would be defeated so thoroughly. Under normal circumstances, any sword cultivator would be suppressed by the all swords united phenomenon that Jian Wuzong cultivated. However, this battle seemed to be the opposite. In front of Little Uncle Master, Jian Wuzong was like a child who was beaten up senselessly without the ability to even withdraw his sword. What a strong physique and melee combat capabilities! Wu Tianyu looked at the two people fighting on the long street and murmured softly. On the long street, Jian Wuzong retreated continuously. There was no longer any pride and composure on his face. Instead, it was replaced with panic. He was completely helpless. Jian Wuzong was defeated. Many cultivators watched in disbelief. Although the phenomenon ranking was a ranking for the strength of golden cores, cultivators that could be ranked on the ranking should not be too weak after entering nascent soul realm. No one expected Jian Wuzong, the third on the phenomenon ranking, to lose to an unknown green-robed cultivator. Furthermore, as a sword cultivator, he had not released his sword the entire time. This was a humiliation for sword cultivators. Thief, don't be cocky. Save senior brother. The dozens of sword sect cultivators watching from the sidelines could no longer care about anything else and attacked when they saw Jian Wuzong in such a state. Hum, hum, hum. Streaks of sword light shone resplendently as sword chi rampaged with a sharp edge, forming an impenetrable sword net that enveloped Su Zimo. What are you guys doing? Don't you have any shame bullying in numbers? Ru Xian could not help but shout. Without hesitation, Nan Gongling and Lu Hanyan summoned their dermic weapons and formed hand seals right away, prepared to help Su Zimo. Clang! Right then, the sound of a sword being unsheathed echoed through the world. An incomparably stunning sword beam appeared on the long street. It was white and blinding as it tore through the void. The sword on his Jian Wuzong's back was pulled out. The sword was long and sharp with a chilling aura. 6 dermic patterns shone on its body in a blinding manner. It was a connate perfected Lord dermic weapon. It was only normal for someone ranked third on the phenomenon ranking and the successor of sword sect to possess a connate perfected Lord dermic weapon. The dermic sword had a strong background and was known as the startling dermic sword. It was Jian Wuzong's destiny dermic weapon and was also his prize as the third of the phenomenon ranking. The cultivators were moved. To think that the sword would be unsheathed at the final moment. Everyone knew that sword cultivators were on completely different levels when they wielded their swords in bare hands. If Jian Wuzong wields his sword, that green-robed man will be in danger. Yes, Jian Wuzong's swordsmanship is sharp and he possesses the legacy of sword sect. Something isn't right. The person's eyes widened and he suddenly could not continue. Many cultivators noticed something amiss as well. Nan Gongling looked over and could not help but feel shocked as disbelief surged in his eyes. The startling dermic sword was not in Jian Wuzong's hands at all. However, it was in Little Uncle Master's hands. The person who pulled out the startling dermic sword was not Jian Wuzong but Su Zimo. Not only did Su Zimo wallop Jian Wuzong till the latter could not withdraw his sword, he even snatched away the latter's sword. Right then, the net of sword chi released by the dozens of sword cultivators from sword sect had already descended. The cold chi was bone-piercing, as though it was slicing the void into pieces. Wielding the startling sword, Su Zimo roared and slashed with his backhand. Bang! Boom! Boom! The sword actually produced the sound of tsunamis. Su Zimo slashed out the intent of raging tides from the sea calming manual with his sword. Dermic powers surged in midair and the sword beam was piercingly cold, as though it was a tsunami that collided heavily against the sword net. Instantly, the dozens of sword cultivators had an illusion that they were in a raging sea and could be drowned at any moment. They were not the only ones. Even the surrounding cultivators felt as though they were in the middle of a tsunami, swaying and spinning. In the deep and turbulent ocean, every cultivator felt incomparably tiny. This was the true power of heaven and earth. Wu Tianyu closed his eyes hurriedly and calmed his mind repeatedly to condense his essence spirit. That feeling gradually dissipated. What a strong sword intent! The soaring feather sect cultivator at the side was shocked and his face was pale. Wu Tianyu opened his eyes slowly and frowned slightly. With a strange expression, he murmured softly, "Sword intent, huh?" For some unknown reason, he felt that the sword intent was a little strange. It was as though it lacked some of the sharpness of the sword Dao and was instead thicker. Clang! Clang! The sound of metal clashing echoed through the battlefield. The sword net shattered. All the sword lights dissipated in an instant and the world returned to peace. Nan Gongling and Lu Hanyan stopped in their tracks and quietly dispersed their hand seals. That was because it was no longer necessary. Victory was decided with a single slash. More than 10 sword cultivators fell to the ground not far away with grim expressions. The swords in their hands were all broken and their tips were scattered all over the ground. Some of the sword cultivators had their perlicues ruptured and fresh blood flowed. Their swords were all thrown to the side as they were unable to maintain their grips on the swords any longer. The grades of those swords were not low either. They were either superior grade or supreme grade dermic weapons. But now they were all crippled and reduced to scrap metal. The entire process seemed simple and was merely a single slash. However, Su Zimo's powerful physique, coupled with his connate startling dermic sword and his powerful saber intent was the reason why he could achieve such an effect. The tall figure was the only one left standing on the long street. His black hair fluttered and he wore an upright green robe. He wielded a long sword with an indifferent expression. Su Zimo raised the sword in his hand and flicked it gently. The sword quivered and let out a hum that was clear and resounding. "Good sword." Su Zimo praised and said unquestionably, "It's mine now." As he said that, he kept the startling dermic sword in his storage bag and headed out of the city. Nangong Ling and the other two were stunned for a moment before following hurriedly. This time round, no one in Wind Cloud City dared to stand in Su Zimo's way. Jian Wuzong had an indignant expression as he looked at Su Zimo's back view. Gritting his teeth, he said, "Do you dare to return the startling dermic sword to me? Let's fight again. As long as I have the sword, I—" Before Jian Wuzong could finish his sentence, his clothes exploded into pieces that scattered on the ground. Pest! The next moment, a commotion broke out among the crowd. "What are you guys doing?" Jian Wuzong surveyed his surroundings and realized that all the cultivators were staring at him with complicated gazes containing shock, surprise, pity and mockery. "What are you guys looking at?" Jian Wuzong roared again with bloodshot eyes and a menacing expression. "Senior brother, your chest." One of the sword sect cultivators pointed at Jian Wuzong's chest with a trembling voice and a horrified expression. Jian Wuzong lowered his head. Unknowingly, his chest was slashed by something and he was drenched in blood. There were 6 words written in blood. "Train for 500 years more." Jian Wuzong felt chills run down his spine and his limbs went cold. Those words must have been written on his chest by the green-robed man during their fight earlier on. This meant that he would have died countless times if the green-robed man wanted to kill him. However, those words were even worse than killing him. Every word struck his heart. Under the watchful eyes of everyone, Jian Wuzong was enraged from the blow and spat out a mouthful of blood before fainting on the spot. Chapter 916. Danger Arrives. Chapter 916. Danger Arrives. 100 Refinement Sect. Dao Lord Scarlet Star arrived at the Great Hall of 100 Refinement Sect in a hurry, and bumped into a middle-aged cultivator with 3 whiskers who was exiting. That person had a steady bearing and there was a hint of dignity in his eyes. It was clear that he had been in a high position for a long time. "Greetings, Sect Master." The 2 cultivators at the entrance bowed to the man. It was the Sect Master of 100 Refinement Sect, Dao Lord White Flames. "Senior Brother White Flames." When Dao Lord Scarlet Star saw that person, he hurried forward to greet him. When Dao Lord White Flames saw his anxious expression, he asked in a deep voice, "What's wrong?" Frowning, Dao Lord Scarlet Star said hatefully, "My 3 good-for-nothing disciples snuck out and haven't returned for a day." Dao Lord White Flames's expression changed slightly. This period was extremely sensitive and 100 Refinement Sect was in a precarious situation. To be fair, if Dao Lord Extreme Fire had not returned in time, none of them knew how they would have survived this ordeal. As for the 3 disciples of Dao Lord Scarlet Star, Lu Hanyan was going to take part in the weapon refinement contest for the 1,000 Crane Tea Party in a month's time. Nothing must go wrong. It was truly dangerous for Lu Hanyan and the other 2 to leave the sect at a time like this. "Do you know where they went?" Dao Lord White Flames asked with a calm expression. "They seem to have gone to Wind Cloud City." Dao Lord Scarlet Star was enraged as he grit his teeth. "Those 3 brats are truly worrisome. I told them to stay in the sect but they refused to listen. If anything happens..." He could not continue and was both angry and anxious. "Don't panic first," Dao Lord White Flame said in a deep voice. Cultivators from the various major sects and factions of the Middle Continent are gathered in Wind Cloud City, and they're all from the righteous path. There shouldn't be anyone harming them. Furthermore, Wind Cloud City isn't too far from the sect. They shouldn't be in much danger. Tao Lord Scarlet Star shook his head. I'm not worried about the orthodox cultivators, I'm worried about Hellfire Hall. Ah! Even someone with Tao Lord White Flames' temperament could not help but exclaim when he heard about Hellfire Hall. Instantly, his expression darkened. Tao Lord Scarlet Star said, As you know, the Hall Master of Hellfire Palace has always wanted to obtain the Scarlet Flame Heart Sutra. Nangong Ling and the other two are the easiest targets for them to target. Furthermore, there's no way that Hellfire Hall would let things go after suffering that huge setback from us previously. Right then, a voice sounded in their minds. Apart from the three of them, who else is there? Upon hearing that voice, both of them shuddered. Tao Lord Extreme Fire was using his spirit consciousness to ask them. Tao Lord Scarlet Star added hurriedly, There's also Mo Ling. A cultivator of the sect saw him going along with them. Yes, that's all right. There might be hope for them. Tao Lord Extreme Fire pondered deeply. Tao Lord Scarlet Star pursed his lips in disapproval. In his opinion, although Mo Ling's seniority was high, he was merely a 100-year-old nascent soul. How strong could he be? It did not matter if he was there or not. Hellfire Hall had already failed once. If they wanted to lay their hands on Nangong Ling and the other two, they might send void reversions. At that time, what use would Mo Ling be? Was he going to use seniority to scare his opponents to death? In reality, Tao Lord Scarlet Star had underestimated the determination of Hellfire Hall. Tao Lord Extreme Fire said, Hurry and send experts of the sect to Wind Cloud City to look for them and bring them back to the sect. All right, I'll instruct my void reversion disciples. Tao Lord White Flames conjured hand seals and prepared to summon his disciples. No! Tao Lord Extreme Fire denied immediately. Scarlet Star, put down what you're doing and make a trip personally. You're at the Dharma characteristic realm and you're fast. If anything happens, you'll be able to suppress it. Upon hearing that, Tao Lord Scarlet Star's heart skipped a beat. He vaguely realized that things might be more serious than he had imagined. All right, I'll go right away. Without hesitation, Tao Lord Scarlet Star tore through the air in the direction of Wind Cloud City and disappeared from 100 Refinement Sect. I hope nothing will happen. Tao Lord White Flames looked into the distance and murmured softly. At the same time, Su Zimo's group of 4 had already left Wind Cloud City and were speeding towards 100 Refinement Sect on their spirit vessel. This time round, Su Zimo was the one steering the spirit vessel and channeling his dermic powers with all his might, pushing it to its limits with lightning speed. Nangong Ling and the other two had yet to notice what was happening. They were still excited as they discussed the battle in Wind Cloud City. However, Su Zimo knew that the sense of danger that surrounded him did not disappear. Instead, it intensified. Little Uncle Master, although you weren't famous in the past, this battle is enough to make you famous. Ru Xian said gleefully, Little Uncle Master, don't worry. Once we return to the sect, I'll definitely spread the news for you so that you can show off properly. Lu Hanyan smiled without saying anything. Nangong Ling's gaze towards Su Zimo had changed as well. There was no longer any hostility. Instead, it was replaced with curiosity, admiration and respect. Little Uncle Master, you're a sword cultivator but you don't seem to be suppressed in your fight with Jian Wuzong. What's with that? Nangong Ling leaned over and asked humbly. With a grim expression, Su Zimo released his spirit consciousness and stared at the thick darkness ahead in silence. It was not that he did not want to answer. However, his attention was entirely focused on checking out his surroundings and preparing to deal with any incoming danger. He truly did not hear Nangong Ling's question. If it was in the past, Nangong Ling would have been enraged and mocked him right away. However, this time round, Nangong Ling merely smiled embarrassedly and scratched his head before asking, Little Uncle Master, who is your master? Is he also a sword cultivator? Is there such a powerful sword cultivator among the seniors of 100 Refinement Sect? Su Zimo had once crippled Cheng Peng with a single sword chi. At the city gate, His sword created a powerful intent realm and severed the swords of more than 10 sword cultivators. Therefore, it was not only Nangong Ling. Even the cultivators of Wind Cloud City mistook Su Zimo for a sword cultivator. Su Zimo did not reply. Instead, he frowned and looked even more grim in the dark night. "Little Uncle Master, what are you doing?" Ru Xian came over as well and asked curiously. "We've already left Wind Cloud City and there's no danger. Why are you in such a hurry to return?" "Little Uncle Master, come over and talk to us." Ru Xian shook Su Zimo's arm gently and said coquettishly. Lu Hanyan, who was silent at the side, finally noticed something amiss and asked softly, "Uncle Master, is there any danger?" Right then, Su Zimo finally spoke. "If anything happens later on, escape immediately. Don't worry about me." Ah! Nangong Ling and the other two were slightly stunned and looked lost. Even though they were chatting along the way, they released their spirit consciousnesses to check out their surroundings and did not discover any danger. Hee hee hee. Right then, a sinister laughter sounded in the air that sent chills down one's spine. "Little child, your senses are sure sharp to be able to detect me. However, the three of them can't escape and neither can you." Chapter 917, Demon. Chapter 917, Demon. The moment that voice sounded, the expressions of Nangong Ling and the other two changed. Nangong Ling clenched his fists and grit his teeth. "The people of Wind Cloud City are truly relentless. They actually chased us all the way here." Lu Hanyan withdrew a black stone from her storage bag and declared, "We don't want this lava crystal anymore. If you guys want it, feel free to take it." Nangong Ling and the other two did not realize who their opponents were. Su Zimo stood up and said indifferently, "They don't want the stone. Keep it." "Tisk, TSK, TSK. Kid, you're the smartest." The sinister voice sounded once more. "Initially, I intended to kill you along the way and capture the three of them. But now, it seems like you have quite a few secrets on you as well." "Hee hee, I can't bear to lose them." Nangong Ling and the other two exchanged glances and seemed to have realized something, looking flustered. "Who are you?" Nangong Ling took a deep breath and asked again. The moment he said that, 7 figures appeared in the surrounding darkness and surrounded their spirit vessel in 7 directions. The 7 of them looked at Su Zimo's group of 4 coldly. Some of them had mocking, teasing gazes and some of them were filled with killing intent. The 7 of them wore the same attire and there was a dark flame tattooed on their sleeves. It was eerie. Hellfire Hall. The expressions of Nangong Ling and the other two turned extremely terrible as well. The enmity between Hellfire Hall and 100 Refinement Sect was irreconcilable. They knew very well that they would not have a good ending if they were to fall into the hands of Hellfire Hall. It was only when their spirit consciousnesses swept past the 7 cultivators of Hellfire Hall that their hearts sank and their limbs turned cold. Void reversions. All 7 of them were void reversions. The difference between them was a major cultivation realm. Even 1 void reversion was enough to kill them, let alone 7 of them. At void reversion realm, one's essence spirit would not be afraid of the strong winds or the scorching sun. However, the dermic powers that could be controlled by one's spirit would be even thicker and more boundless. What was even more frightening was that the essence spirit of a void reversion was so strong that he could already launch spirit consciousness attacks. Nascent souls could not withstand a spirit consciousness attack. This was a suppression of a major cultivation realm. Ru Xian was furious and her face was pale from fright. However, she mustered her courage and shouted, "Why, you guys from Hellfire Hall, how dare you send 7 void reversions to deal with us 4 nascent souls? You're shameless and immoral." At the end of her sentence, Ru Xian's voice turned softer and softer and she lost her aura. Hellfire Hall was a group of unscrupulous cultivators to begin with. There was no morality to speak of with them. Foo-foo. The 7 void reversions of Hellfire Hall stood around with their arms crossed and sneers in their eyes. Right from the beginning, Su Zimo did not say anything. He did not attack either. If there were only 7 void reversions, he had an 80% chance of killing all 7 of them with his trump cards. The real reason why Su Zimo did not make a move was because there was still someone from Hellfire Hall who had yet to appear. This was the true trump card of Hellfire Palace. Su Zimo stared at the dark night ahead and pursed his lips without saying anything. Before long, a figure walked out slowly in the night. The intruder's body was hunched and he supported himself with a walking stick. His beard and hair were white and he staggered as though he could die at any moment. Su Zimo narrowed his eyes and suppressed his killing intent once more. Dharma characteristic Tao Lord. Although the intruder was on the brink of death, the aura he gave off was definitely unique to Dharma characteristic experts. Su Zimo had cultivated 2 unprecedented essence spirits, and had the ability to kill those at a higher cultivation realm. However, the difference of 2 major realms was like a huge chasm that he could not cross. The power of a Dharma characteristic was way too terrifying and he could not withstand it. Back in Thousand Demon Valley, Su Zimo had used all his trump cards. He had activated his dragonification and used the divine phoenix bone to injure the overlord of levitating Goat Peak by surprise. Despite that, he was almost killed by a single palm strike. It was clear how terrifying Dharma characteristic Tao Lords were. Later on, if Tao Lord Extreme Fire had not appeared, he would have been killed by the overlord of levitating Goat Peak. Even though the old man looked old and was in his twilight years, Su Zimo did not dare to act rashly. If he was alone, he would have many choices. The safest way was to catch them off guard and make use of blood escape to break out of the encirclement and flee far away. When he released the blood escape art with all his might, even with the overlord of levitating Goat Peak strength, the latter could barely keep up and only managed to maintain the distance. The Dharma characteristic old man before him looked like he was at the end of his life and his blood chi was weak. There was no way he could catch up to Su Zimo. But now, Su Zimo had Nangong Ling and the other 2 beside him. He could not abandon the 3 of them and escape alone. Or perhaps, Su Zimo could choose to use the divine phoenix bone and attempt to fight the old man head-on. However, there was also immense danger involved. Given Su Zimo's strength, he could not activate the divine phoenix bone on his own accord. He had to rely on his opponent. Even if he could successfully activate the divine phoenix bone, he might not be able to kill the old man before him. The uncertainty was way too great. If he could not kill them in one strike, he and Nangong Ling would not be able to escape death. As his thoughts raced, Su Zimo's gaze flickered and he calmed down. He retracted his killing intent and continued waiting for an opportunity. The more dangerous the situation was, the calmer he had to be. Compared to Su Zimo, although Nangong Ling and the other 2 were older, they were flustered and did not know what to do. Nangong Ling and the other 2 could detect the cultivation realms of the 7 void reversions around them, but they could not detect the old man's cultivation. What did that mean? The intruder was a Dharma characteristic Tao Lord. While Su Zimo was thinking of countermeasures, the minds of Nangong Ling and the other 2 were already in chaos. If the 7 void reversions made the 3 of them feel that their chances of survival were slim. The appearance of the Dharma characteristic Tao Lord left them in despair. In front of Dharma characteristic Tao Lords, nascent souls were like mortals before golden cores. They had no chance at all. Lu Hanyan laughed self-deprecatingly. To think that the 3 of us juniors are worthy of a personal visit from a Dharma characteristic of Hellfire Hall. The 3 of you are naturally not worthy. The old man grinned and the wrinkles on his face were already stacked. However, the Scarlet Flame Heart Sutra in your possession is worth it. Nangong Ling and the other 2 felt their hearts turn cold. The old man continued, after capturing you guys, 100 Refinement Sect will definitely lose in the weapon refinement competition a month later. After I squeeze everything out of you, I might even be able to use you 3 brats to lure out your master. Don't you think it's worth it to have a strategy that kills 3 birds with 1 stone? TSK. TSK. Nangong Ling and the other 2 were ashen when they heard that. There was only a single thought in the minds of Nangong Ling and the other 2. Commit suicide. Right then, a tremendous might descended and Nangong Ling and the other 2 felt like they could not move at all. They could not even send their essence spirits out. The old man said coldly, "You'll only die if you fall into my hands. Otherwise, you won't even have the chance to commit suicide." Demon! You're a demon! Ru Xian broke down completely and cried loudly. Nangong Ling and Lu Hanyan were also scared out of their wits as their bodies trembled. Chapter 9:18. Waiting for an opportunity. Chapter 9:18. Waiting for an opportunity. Su Zimo was the only one who could remain calm on the spirit vessel. Su Zimo had fought his way through and was invincible among his peers. He had never tasted defeat and had already accumulated an invincible aura. As such, his mental state was tough and unshakable. Furthermore, back when he was fighting for the heaven-slaying sword art in Thousand Demon Valley, he had fought against many overlords and 3 top Dharma characteristic Tao lords. Tao Lord Extreme Fire was the one that borrowed his body for the short clash at that time. However, with that experience, Su Zimo would not panic when facing a Dharma characteristic Tao Lord. Nan Gongling and the other 2 had lived for more than 200 years but had never experienced something like this. In the face of a Dharma characteristic Tao Lord, they felt despair and were stunned by the words of the old man from Hellfire Hall. The 3 of them were panicking and had completely broken down. The old man from Hellfire Hall narrowed his eyes and chuckled when he saw Su Zimo on the spirit vessel. "Kid, you've only lived for a little more than 100 years. It's truly rare for you to have such a temperament." The old man from Hellfire Hall laughed weirdly and changed the topic. "The reason why you're so calm is because you're waiting for the experts of 100 Refinement Sect to come and save you, right?" Su Zimo was silent. He believed that 100 Refinement Sect would definitely be alerted if the 4 of them had not returned for a day. Perhaps, experts of the sect were already on the way to save them. The old man from Hellfire Hall grinned. "I might as well tell you that it's too late even if 100 Refinement Sect manages to react." Nan Gongling and the other 2 looked despondent. It was as though everything was within the control of the old man from Hellfire Hall, and they had no chance of escaping. Lu Hanyan and Ru Xian could not move at all. They could only cry silently as their bodies trembled. "Old man, you don't look like you have much time left either. You don't have much lifespan left and you're nearing the end of it." Su Zimo looked at the old man of Hellfire Hall and sneered. "Fufu, even if we die, how long can you live for? 30 years? 100 years? When he heard Su Zimo's sneer, Nan Gongling glanced sideways and thought to himself, "Little Uncle Master is truly fearless. Even at this point, he can still smile. I can't compare to his boldness in the face of death." As he thought about it, Nan Gongling grit his teeth and felt an adrenaline rush as he thought to himself, "Since I'm going to die anyway, I might as well curse to my heart's content before I die." At that thought, Nan Gongling threw caution to the wind and cursed, "Old dog, what's the use of cultivating to the Dharma characteristic realm? You're still going to die. Ha ha ha. I'll wait for you down there, you old fart." The old man from Hellfire Hall was trembling with rage. Su Zimo and Nan Gongling's words had indeed struck a sore spot. No matter how high his cultivation realm was, he could not withstand the corrosion of time. With a dark expression and a cold gaze, the old man from Hellfire Hall said coldly, "Even if I only have 80 years left, I'll live longer than you brats." When he heard that, Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat and he lowered his head slightly to hide the killing intent in his eyes. The old man from Hellfire Hall grit his teeth. "Don't worry, I'll definitely kill you brats before I die." The moment he said that, the glabella of the old man from Hellfire Hall flickered as he released an extremely terrifying and majestic spirit consciousness. It descended with a bang and struck the consciousnesses of Su Zimo and the other 3. Ugh! Nan Gongling and the other 2 shuddered. Their essence spirits dimmed significantly after being struck by the spirit consciousness and fainted on the spot. Su Zimo collapsed limply as well. "Let's go!" Waving his robes, the old man from Hellfire Hall swept Su Zimo's group of 4 into a gigantic dark cloud and disappeared from the spot with the 7 void reversions. The spirit vessel that was carrying Su Zimo's group of 4 lost its support of dermic powers and hovered for a moment before descending. The night returned to normal. The dark clouds carried Su Zimo and the others at an extremely fast speed. "We've done a great deed this time round. Capturing the 3 of them is equivalent to seizing Tao Lord Scarlet Star's Achilles heel." "That's right. It's all thanks to Senior Yu." "That's right. We've benefited from Senior Yu as well." The 7 void reversions flattered him again. The old man from Hellfire Hall clasped his hands behind his back expressionlessly and said indifferently, "If I can fail against 4 nascent soul realm brats, my 10,000 years of life would have been wasted." When he heard the sounds around him, Su Zimo fell to the side. Although he was conscious, he did not move and tried his best to control his emotions. Even his heartbeat and blood flow was maintained at a constant state. If it was just a void reversion, there was no need for him to be so cautious. However, the old man from Hellfire Hall was a Dharma characteristic Tao Lord. Although he was already in his twilight years, Su Zimo did not dare to be careless. The reason why he was able to remain conscious was not because the old man from Hellfire Hall had failed. In his consciousness, the black-haired essence spirit had indeed fainted. Even with the protection of the creation Green Lotus, the black-haired essence spirit could not defend against the attack of the old man's spirit consciousness. However, there was another essence spirit in Su Zimo's consciousness. A scarlet-haired spirit formed from cultivating the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness. At that moment, the scarlet-haired spirit was hiding in a corner of his consciousness with a calm expression, waiting patiently for an opportunity to strike. As long as he seized this opportunity, it was not impossible for him to kill the old man from Hellfire Hall. Of course, all of that had to be done before they returned to Hellfire Hall. If he entered the territory of Hellfire Hall, even if he could kill the old man and the other 7 void reversions, he would definitely alert the experts of Hellfire Hall and be captured. They had been speeding for more than 2 hours. Su Zimo had a rough idea of the location of Hellfire Hall. If they were traveling at full speed with dermic weapons controlled by dermic Tao Lords, they would arrive within 4 hours. Time was running out. Once he entered Hellfire Hall, he would have no choice but to wait for death no matter how powerful he was. Su Zimo was getting anxious as well. In fact, he was wondering if he should get up and fight right now. But soon, he gave up on that thought. The dark clouds were huge and Su Zimo's group of 4 was still in the middle. Although the 7 void reversions were close to them, the old man from Hellfire Hall stood at the front of the dark clouds. The 2 of them were 100 feet apart. If Su Zimo made any strange movements, the old man from Hellfire Hall would have noticed it before he even got close to the latter. There was a 90% chance that his plan would fail. Su Zimo composed himself and continued waiting. The longer this dragged on, the less chances he had. But now, he could only wait. He did not have a second chance against a Dharma characteristic Tao Lord. If he miscalculated, Nan Gongling and the other 2 would die as well. Right then, the old man from Hellfire Hall who was at the front suddenly turned around and walked toward Su Zimo. Senior Yub. The 7 void reversions bowed hurriedly. The old man from Hellfire Hall nodded and looked down at Su Zimo's group of 4 with a dark gaze, seemingly deep in thought. Senior, is there a problem? A void reversion asked softly. It's a pity that my lifespan is almost up. What a waste of this great physical body. The old man from Hellfire Hall shook his head and sighed. Squatting down, he reached out with his skinny palm and pinched Su Zimo's arm. Licking his lips he said, if I had met him a few years ago, I would rather give up my body and assimilate him. Is that so? Initially, the old man from Hellfire Hall was lamenting to himself. To his surprise, he heard a reply that was chilling and murderous. Chapter 919, Killing a Tao Lord. Chapter 919, Killing a Tao Lord. The old man was shocked. The voice did not come from the 7 void reversions around him but from beside his feet. This little nascent soul was not stunned by his spirit consciousness. How was that possible? The old man frowned. Suddenly he sensed the aura of death. This aura had been getting closer and closer with the passage of time over the years. However, he had never felt it so strongly before. It was as though he would die in the next moment. How could a nascent soul threaten him? There was no time to think. The old man from Hellfire Hall wanted to get up immediately and retreat, leaving the dangerous place beneath his feet. All of a sudden, 2 fair and strong palms appeared on the old man's withered wrist and gripped him tightly like iron pincers. Instinctively, he struggled but to no avail. The old man's expression changed as he swept his gaze across. Veins popped out on the hands that were gripping his wrists. The bones changed and sharp claws popped out from its fingertips. Scarlet scales could be seen on the back of the hands, looking extremely creepy. The old man of Hellfire Hall looked over instinctively and his pupils constricted. The green-robed man who should have fainted had already sat up. His black hair was gone and in its place was a head of scarlet hair that resembled blood. The green-robed man's eyes shone with a demonic glint and he exuded a shuddering aura. "You're a demon." Before the old man could finish speaking, he was interrupted by another voice. Those two words were enough to send shivers down his spine. "Baron." Before the sentence was finished, an extremely strange dermic power fluctuation appeared in the void. With a green-robed man as the center, gray fluctuations appeared beneath the feet of the old man from Hellfire Hall, and enveloped him like water ripples. Initially, the old man from Hellfire Hall could have escaped the range of the gray ripples. However, his wrist was gripped tightly by the green-robed man. With just that slight pause, his entire body was engulfed in gray ripples. It was a strange feeling. As though he had fallen into a swamp, his body turned heavy. Immediately after, the old man of Hellfire Hall seemed to have sensed something as his eyes widened in shock and his body trembled uncontrollably. Lifespan. The old man from Hellfire Hall opened his mouth with a menacing expression and a quivering voice, as though he was experiencing immense fear. He was nearing his later years and the blood chi in his body was severely depleted. He was extremely frail. But now, what was left of his flesh was drying up at a speed visible to the naked eye. In the blink of an eye, he was nothing but skin and bones. My lifespan. The old man from Hellfire Hall seemed like he wanted to howl hysterically, but his voice turned increasingly hoarse until it was silent. His widened eyes had already turned dull and his eyeballs were withered. The glabella of the old man from Hellfire Hall flickered and a spirit consciousness rippled, as though the essence spirit in his spirit consciousness wanted to struggle one last time. However, all activity ceased before long. The old man's life force had already vanished without a trace. The 7 void reversions watched helplessly as the old man of Hellfire Hall was drained of all life in a single breath, leaving only a skeleton with no life in his body. All 7 of them were dumbfounded with disbelief in their eyes. Everything happened too quickly and the 7 void reversions were momentarily stunned, unable to recover from their shock. The gray ripple had already reached them. The 7 void reversions did not feel anything initially. But soon, their expressions changed. Their lifespans were declining. Although it was not fast, the decline was irreversible. Right then, the green-robed man who was initially sitting on the ground leaped up. He was tall and his clothes were torn with scarlet scales growing on his body. His scarlet hair danced and demonic chi surged with a murderous aura. He was like an ancient demon that wanted to devour the world and slaughter all living beings. Who are you? A void reversion Dao being asked with a trembling voice. His face pale from the fright of the sudden change. The scarlet-haired demon was none other than Su Zimo. Although the process of killing the Dharma characteristic Dao Lord of Hellfire Hall seemed simple, he had actually planned it for a long time. Ever since the old man of Hellfire Hall appeared, Su Zimo had been thinking about how he could escape with Nangong Ling and the other 2. No matter how he thought about it, he could not come up with a foolproof plan. Later on, he noticed something. The old man from Hellfire Hall exuded a strong aura of twilight, as though he was about to die. That was the reason why Su Zimo intentionally provoked the old man of Hellfire Hall with words such as, "You don't have much time left to live." Nangong Ling thought that Su Zimo was no longer afraid of death and merely cursed for the sake of it before his death, so he followed suit and cursed. Little did he know that Su Zimo was probing the old man of Hellfire Hall. Indeed, the old man from Hellfire Hall was tricked and revealed that he still had 80 years to live. It was not the old man from Hellfire Hall's fault either. Although he had lived for 10,000 years, he had never heard of a nascent soul controlling a power that could affect Dharma characteristic Dao Lords. Furthermore, this was a power that could cause one's lifespan to decrease irreversibly. He was not the only one. No one in Tianhuang mainland would believe that a nascent soul realm cultivator could control such power. That was also the terror of the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness. Of course, Su Zimo could not understand why there were so many strange and mysterious characters in the demonic art of Baron. Furthermore, his cultivation realm was limited and he could not unleash the true might of Baron. Moreover, the gray ripples that spread out from Baron would cause one's lifespan to decrease faster the closer they were to the center. That was the reason why Su Zimo did not dare to act rashly. He could only wait for an opportunity. He wanted the two of them to be close enough to not give the old man of Hellfire Hall any chance to escape. As Su Zimo had expected, after he released Baron, the first reaction of the old man from Hellfire Hall was to retreat. However, Su Zimo had already gripped the old man's arms tightly and the latter could not break free. Of course, even at the center of the gray-colored ripples, the reduction of lifespan was only at a rate of 100 years per breath. 4 ordinary Dharma characteristic Tao Lords, a single breath was enough for them to react or even counterattack. A single spirit consciousness from a Dharma characteristic Tao Lord was enough to kill Su Zimo. However, it was different for the old man from Hellfire Hall. In a single breath, his remaining 80 years of lifespan had been used up. Although the entire process was short, the probing, the waiting, and even the final attack, any single mistake would result in 2 completely different outcomes. The Baron demonic art could not display its true might yet, and could only be considered as a special attack. For example, although a Dharma characteristic died within the range of the gray-colored ripples, the 7 void reversions were not affected much. Firstly, the 7 void reversions were slightly further away, and their lifespans were decreasing at a relatively slower rate, around 50 to 80 years per breath. Secondly, the 7 of them were only in their 2000s and 3000s. Compared to their lifespan of 5,000 years, they were considered to be at the peak of their prime. The effect of 1 or 2 breaths reducing their lifespans was way too little. Of course, with the old man from Hellfire Hall killed, Su Zimo no longer feared the remaining 7 men. Chapter 920. Flames of War. Chapter 920. Flames of War. What is this demonic art? On the dark clouds, a void reversion shouted in panic. A demonic art meant to kill. Su Zimo hollered and took a deep breath, howling into the skies. Roar! A resounding dragon roar sounded, piercing through metal and cracking rocks as the world shook. There were no outsiders here. Now that Nan Gongling and the other 2 had fainted, Su Zimo no longer had to conceal himself. He transformed into his dragon form and let out a dragon roar. In the primordial era, the dragon race was the supreme of all races. Any race, including humans, would feel uncontrollable fear upon hearing a dragon roar. It was a memory etched in the depths of their bloodlines. The dragon roar was a killing technique of the dragon race to begin with. Su Zimo cultivated the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness and his body was infused with dragon blood. His bloodline was even stronger than a true dragon. Right now, that dragon roar had a huge impact on the 7 void reversions. Among them, the void reversion closest to them was caught off guard and froze on the spot with bloodshot eyes and a stiff expression. The next moment, streams of scarlet blood flowed out of the void reversion's 7 orifices. This person was only at void reversion realm and had a weak physique. He could not withstand the penetrative power of the dragon roar and was killed on the spot. Before his essence spirit could escape, it was shattered into pieces. Back in the 1000 demon meat, Su Zimo could already suppress the territorial lords without his dragon form. All the territorial lords were the strongest mid-level fiend demons in 1000 Demon Valley. The 7 void reversions before him were merely cultivators of Hellfire Hall. How could they compare to the territorial lords who fought their way to their respective positions? Furthermore, now that Su Zimo had transformed into his dragon form and released his full strength, the 7 void reversions were no match for him. Even though the void reversions that were standing slightly further away were not killed by the dragon roar, their bodies shuddered and their minds were in chaos as their ears buzzed. In a flash, Su Zimo appeared before one of them and poked his glabella. Poof! There was a bloody hole in his glabella. Before the void reversion could react, his essence spirit was stabbed to death. Even the mid-level fiend demons of 1000 Demon Valley could not defend against Su Zimo's body. Those void reversions had weak physiques and were like paper before Su Zimo, who had transformed into a dragon. They could not withstand a single blow. Swash! Su Zimo's figure flashed once more and demonic chi surged as he extended a thick finger to pierce the glabella of 2 other void reversions at the side. The void reversions were completely helpless against his dragon claws. In the blink of an eye, 4 void reversions were dead. Finally, the remaining 3 void reversions snapped out of their stupor and turned pale when they saw the bloody scene around them. Swoosh! An evil gust of wind blew. A gigantic scarlet figure arrived before the three of them and reached out with a menacing gigantic hand, grabbing towards them. Kill! Among them, 2 void reversions gritted their teeth and released their spirit consciousness attacks immediately. At the same time, they conjured hand seals and conjured 2 gigantic balls of hellfire. The remaining void reversion fled without hesitation. 2 spirit consciousness attacks arrived instantly. However, a bedazzling golden light shone from Su Zimo's left wrist, forming a golden light barrier that was covered with mysterious runes. The Mingwang prayer beads were Essence spirit dermic weapons. When the 2 spirit consciousness attacks collided against the golden barrier, they could not penetrate Su Zimo's consciousness and dissipated immediately. The 2 balls of hellfire fused together, forming a dark and cold fireball that smashed towards Su Zimo's face. Snorting coldly, Su Zimo reached out with his right hand and grabbed the ball of hellfire. Under the gazes of the 2 void reversions, the ball of hellfire exploded from Su Zimo's bare hands. However, Su Zimo's palm was intact. The 2 void reversions widened their mouths in shock as though they had seen a ghost. That was the palm with the divine phoenix bone. The hellfire could not corrode it at all. After 2 consecutive failed attacks, Su Zimo had already arrived in front of them. At that distance, the 2 void reversions did not even have a chance to escape. Su Zimo reached out and slapped the top of their heads. Poof, poof. Their heads were smashed on the spot and their essence spirits were destroyed. Su Zimo raised his head and looked at the last void reversion who had already escaped from the battlefield and was about to disappear into the night. He did not move at all, as though he had given up on his pursuit. However, something strange happened to his right eye. It was as though a blazing sun was born and a blinding beam of light shot through the void, penetrating the head of the void reversion instantly. Thump! The final void reversion fell here as well. The beam dissipated. Night descended once more and peace returned to the world. In the pitch-black clouds, there was only a tall figure left. He was covered in scarlet scales and his scarlet hair danced in the wind. His gaze was burning like a peerless fiend celestial with a domineering aura that looked down on the world. At that moment, not many people in the cultivation world knew that the monster incarnate that caused countless paragons and sects to tremble had already arrived in the middle continent. The autumn wind was bleak and the flames of war were about to ignite. In the blink of an eye, the night had passed. The sun had just risen and the skies on the east turned white. Tao Lord Scarlet Star was travel-worn and arrived at the entrance of the 100 Refinements Great Hall with a grim expression. When Tao Lord White Flames saw Tao Lord Scarlet Star return alone, he realized that something was amiss. However, he still went forward and asked, "How was it?" Tao Lord Scarlet Star shook his head. He searched outside for the entire night and was completely exhausted. "Don't worry, they might just be playful. Given their cultivation, they might not be in any danger," Tao Lord White Flames consoled. Tao Lord Scarlet Star sighed. "It's too late." "What?" Tao Lord White Flames asked. Tao Lord Scarlet Star said, "I rushed to Wind Cloud City right away and found out that although the 4 of them caused quite a stir in the city, they managed to escape unscathed. After that, I rushed out of Wind Cloud City and searched everywhere. Finally, I found this." Tao Lord Scarlet Star took out a spirit vessel, and a look of sadness flashed through his eyes. "This is Ru Xian's spirit vessel. I gave it to her when she entered the nascent soul realm." This. Tao Lord White Flames knew that Nangong Ling's group was most likely doomed. However, he still consoled. The loss of the spirit vessel might not prove anything. Perhaps the 4 of them escaped. Tao Lord Scarlet Star shook his head. There is the remnant aura of a Dharma characteristic on the spirit vessel. Furthermore, it's from Hellfire Hall. What? Tao Lord White Flames' expression changed slightly. Enduring his grief, Tao Lord Scarlet Star grit his teeth. Nangong and the others have already been captured by Hellfire Hall. That aura was left behind intentionally by Hellfire Hall. Hellfire Hall, you're declaring war and playing with fire here. Tao Lord Extreme Fire's voice sounded from the hall with a murderous intent. Tao Lord Scarlet Star lamented, "Poor children. I wonder what sort of torture they will have to endure after falling into the hands of Hellfire Hall." Tao Lord White Flames knew that Nangong Ling and the other 2 were the personal disciples of Tao Lord Scarlet Star and the latter viewed them as his own children. they were extremely close. Now that his 3 disciples were in trouble, no one could understand the pain in Tao Lord Scarlet Star's heart. Tao Lord White Flames did not know how to console him either. Right then, a Sect disciple sped over with a delighted expression and shouted, "Sect Master! Lineage Leader! Senior Brother Nangong and the others are back!" Chapter 921. Peerless Expert. Chapter 921. Peerless Expert. At that moment, Tao Lord Scarlet Star was immersed in his sorrow and could not hear anything. However, Tao Lord White Flames frowned and asked in a deep voice, "Which senior brother Nangong?" The disciple replied, "Senior brother Nangong Ling and senior sisters Lu Hanyan and Ru Xian." What? This time round, Tao Lord Scarlet Star heard everything clearly. He turned around and arrived at the person's body in a flash. Grabbing the shoulders of the disciple with widened eyes, Tao Lord Scarlet Star asked loudly, "Are you saying that Nangong Ling and the others are still alive and have returned?" "Yes, I heard from the patrolling disciples that senior brother Nangong and the others are heading towards the sect." The cultivator was shocked by Tao Lord Scarlet Star's behavior and replied hurriedly. The news of Nangong Ling's group of 4 being captured was still a secret and was not made public. Tao Lord White Flames and Tao Lord Crimson Star were worried that this would cause panic. The 2 of them merely instructed their disciples to keep an eye on Nangong Ling's group of 4. Therefore, the cultivator did not know why the 2 Tao Lords were so agitated. Without hesitation, Tao Lord Scarlet Star prepared to head out and welcome them. The more composed Tao Lord White Flames held him down and reminded, "Hold on, it might be a trap." Ah! Tao Lord Scarlet Star was stunned for a moment before reacting. This was way too strange. Nangong Ling's group, 4 nascent souls, were captured by a Dharma characteristic of Hellfire Hall. How did they return all of a sudden? With a calm expression, Tao Lord White Flames turned and asked, "Apart from the 4 of them, is there anyone else?" "I'm not sure about that. I don't think so." The disciple replied, "If there were outsiders, the senior brother who sent the message would definitely mention it." Tao Lord Scarlet Star was anxious and asked hurriedly, "Are the 3 of them injured? How are they? Were they coerced?" The disciple was sweating profusely. The message only said that senior brother Nangong and the other 3 are safe and sound. As for whether they were coerced, I really don't know. That's enough. Right then, Tao Lord Extreme Fire's voice sounded in Tao Lord Scarlet Star's mind. "Go and bring them back. This calamity should have been resolved." Although Tao Lord Extreme Fire did not know how Su Zimo managed to escape from the hands of Dharma characteristic Tao Lord with Nangong Ling and the other 3. He guessed that only Su Zimo could create such a possibility. In truth, Tao Lord Extreme Fire had already guessed most of it. However, he did not expect that Su Zimo did not escape from the hands of a Dharma characteristic Tao Lord. Instead, he killed the latter directly. "All right, I'll go right away." Unable to wait any longer, Tao Lord Scarlet Star sped out of the sect in a flash. Nangong Ling and the other 2 were already awake on a brand new spirit vessel. After more than 4 hours of traveling, the spirit vessel was about to arrive at 100 Refinement Sect. "Little Uncle Master, what's going on? Little Uncle Master, what happened? Didn't we fall into the hands of Hellfire Hall? Little Uncle Master, where's that old fart?" Along the way, ever since Nangong Ling and the other 2 woke up, they approached Su Zimo and chattered non-stop, wanting nothing more than to pry open his skull. Even someone as quiet as Lu Hanyan could not sit still. Blushing slightly, she tugged at Su Zimo's sleeves and asked softly, "Uncle Master, what happened last night?" Su Zimo had already transformed into his black hair and green robes. He merely sat in front of the spirit vessel and smiled exasperatedly. "I don't know either. When I woke up, we were already on the spirit vessel." "Little Uncle Master, you're lying. I don't believe you." Ru Xian pouted in doubt. Lu Hanyan tilted her head slightly and looked at Su Zimo unblinkingly with her beautiful eyes, as though she wanted to see through his secret. For some reason, Lu Hanyan and Ru Xian felt that this matter definitely had something to do with Su Zimo and was not as simple as he made it out to be. A woman's intuition was truly accurate. It did not make sense either. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat and he almost thought that he had revealed something. However, He could not explain nor tell them about what happened. Could he tell them that as a nascent soul, he displayed godly powers and killed off a Dharma characteristic? Could he tell them that thereafter, he killed the remaining 7 void reversions in a half-human half-dragon form? That sounded even more magical. Furthermore, he had no intention of revealing his identity just yet. At that thought, Su Zimo could only grit his teeth and reply, "My cultivation realm is higher, so I woke up earlier than you guys." Lu Hanyan and Ru Xian were still in disbelief. Compared to the two of them, Nan Gongling was clearly much more practical. He stood by the side and helped Su Zimo out of the predicament. "Junior sisters, don't bother little Uncle Master anymore. There should be a peerless expert who helped us in this matter. That's the only reason why we survived." "Who is that peerless expert? Why isn't he showing himself?" Ru Xian pouted and asked. "This." Nan Gongling was embarrassed and speechless. How would he know who the peerless expert was? Ru Xian turned around and glared at Su Zimo. "Humph, little Uncle Master, don't even think about hiding it. This definitely has something to do with you." "I got it." Suddenly, a thought flashed through Ru Xian's mind and she exclaimed. Everyone present was shocked. Ru Xian approached Su Zimo mysteriously and said firmly, "Little Uncle Master, stop hiding. You were definitely the one who sought out that peerless expert, right?" Su Zimo, ah. After a while, Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat when he saw that both of them were still pestering him. Suddenly, his expression turned unfathomable. "All right, since you've discovered my secret, I won't hide it anymore." Su Zimo coughed gently and said indifferently, "Actually, I was the one who killed the Dharma characteristic Tao Lord of Hellfire Hall and the remaining 7 void reversions thereafter before rescuing you guys." Tisk. Now that Su Zimo said it as such, Ru Xian did not believe him instead. On the other hand, Lu Hanyan frowned slightly and fell into deep thought, as though she had to ponder over Su Zimo's words for a long time. 100 Refinement Sect was right ahead. All of a sudden, the sound of clothes fluttering through the air echoed as a figure sped over and arrived on the spirit vessel in the blink of an eye. "Master!" Nan Gongling and the other two had just escaped death. Now that they saw Tao Lord Scarlet Star, they were naturally delighted and stood up to greet him. However, right after, the 3 of them seemed to have thought of something and gradually reacted. All of them felt guilty and lowered their heads, not daring to speak. Tao Lord Scarlet Star was initially worried. However, when he saw that Nan Gongling and the other 2 were alive and well without any injuries, his expression darkened and he was enraged. "You 3 brats! How much worry do you guys want to cause?" After a brief silence, Tao Lord Scarlet Star roared and sprayed saliva all over the 3 of their faces. Su Zimo looked at Nan Gongling and the other 2 and shrugged his shoulders, wishing them all the best. He hurriedly distanced himself from them, afraid that he would be implicated. Chapter 922. Who are the juniors? Chapter 922. Who are the juniors? From the entrance of the sect to the entrance of the 100 Refinements Great Hall, Nan Gongling and the other 2 were scolded by Tao Lord Scarlet Star the entire way. Although they were lambasted and their faces were covered in saliva, none of them dared to wipe it off. Without Nan Gongling and the other 2 pestering him, Su Zimo watched the commotion from the side and was happy to relax. Tao Lord Scarlet Star naturally asked him about the entire incident as well. However, Su Zimo insisted that he knew nothing and casually brushed it off, saying that he was already on the spirit vessel when he woke up. Tao Lord Scarlet Star led Su Zimo's group of 4 to the entrance of 100 Refinements Great Hall before stopping his lectures to take a breather. "Master, you're tired too. We know we were wrong. Quick, drink some water." Ru Xian was the best at pleasing Tao Lord Scarlet Star. She hurried over and retrieved a steaming cup of tea from out of thin air before handing it over. Tao Lord Scarlet Star harumphed and took the cup of tea, downing it in one gulp. He said in a displeased manner, "I'll teach you guys a good lesson after this period of time." Nan Gongling and the other 2 exchanged glances. They knew that this episode had come to an end. The 3 of them heaved a sigh of relief and pulled up their sleeves in unison, wiping the saliva off their faces. "It's good that you're fine. The 1,000 Crane Tea Party is in a month's time and you'll have a chance to redeem yourselves." Tao Lord White Flames chuckled and tried to smooth things over. After some thought, Tao Lord Scarlet Star turned around and frowned at Su Zimo. Junior brother, although you're young, you're still their senior. Why did you go along with their nonsense? Don't you know how to stop them? Su Zimo had just taken out the heaven-slaying sword art and was prepared to continue comprehending it. Unexpectedly, Tao Lord Scarlet Star turned around and started lecturing him. All you do all day is read that stupid book. What are you able to get out of that? After lecturing Nangong Ling and the other two, it was clear that Tao Lord Scarlet Star was still angry. He continued, as their uncle master, you have to study hard and be a role model. You can't just idle around and read useless books all day. Su Zimo was completely stumped. This was the first time he heard someone refer to the heaven-slaying sword art as a useless book. Su Zimo knew that Tao Lord Scarlet Star was concerned about Nangong Ling and the other two. That was why he was now a target of the latter's lecture. It was not out of malice. Su Zimo did not take it to heart and merely smiled without defending himself. However, Nangong Ling and the other two could not take it anymore. Lu Hanyan stood out hurriedly and said, Master, you can't blame Uncle Master for this. I wanted to go to the Wind Cloud gathering and senior brother Nangong and junior sister Ru Xian accompanied me. Uncle Master tried his best to stop me, but I was too stubborn. It's not your fault, junior sister. Nangong Ling added. Junior sister will be taking part in the weapon refinement competition in a month's time. She's under too much pressure and that's why she wanted to take a breather. Furthermore, little Uncle Master did try his best to stop us in this matter. I was the one who kept causing trouble and he followed us because he was worried that we would be in danger. After what happened in Wind Cloud City, Nangong Ling watched as Su Zimo crippled Cheng Peng, who was ranked 15 on the phenomenon ranking. Thereafter, he had even suppressed Jian Wuzong, who was ranked 3rd on the phenomenon ranking, to the point where the latter could not even draw his sword. Nangong Ling's impression of Su Zimo had changed drastically. At that moment, he even stood out to speak up for Su Zimo. Tao Lord Scarlet Star frowned slightly. His disciples had always respected the seniority hierarchy and had never disobeyed him in the past. Even when he reprimanded them earlier on, none of them rebutted. To think that now, he had merely made a few remarks about Mo Ling, but the few of them could not take it. Tao Lord Scarlet Star looked at Su Zimo meaningfully and thought to himself, seems like this junior brother of mine is rather capable. He knew his 3 disciples the best. All of them were prideful. None of them would respect an uncle master who appeared out of the blue and was younger than them. Furthermore, the latter's cultivation realm was similar to theirs as well. To think that in just 2 months, his 3 disciples were already starting to defend their uncle master. Ru Xian jumped out as well and said straightforwardly in a huff, Master, you're not allowed to reprimand little Uncle Master. Do you know that if not for him, the 3 of us would have been bullied to death in Wind Cloud City? At that point, Ru Xian's eyes reddened and she was almost in tears. Tao Lord Crimson Star had been to Wind Cloud City. However, he merely had a rough gist of things and did not know the details. Before he could ask, Ru Xian had already recounted the battles in Wind Cloud City in tears. 2 paragons on the phenomenon ranking were defeated. 2 assassins of Hidden Death Sect were captured and killed. More than 10 Sword Sect cultivators were slain with a single slash. That battle report was shocking enough by itself. Coupled with Ru Xian's exaggerated narration, even Tao Lord Scarlet Star and Tao Lord White Flames felt their blood boil with excitement. Tao Lord Scarlet Star's brows gradually relaxed and his gaze towards Su Zimo softened. Lu Hanyan took out a black stone from her storage bag and handed it over. Master, this is the stone. Tao Lord Crimson Star received it. A single sweep of a Dharma characteristic spirit consciousness was enough to detect it. It's a lava crystal indeed. Tao Lord Scarlet Star and Tao Lord White Flames exchanged glances and nodded. Ru Xian continued, although I don't know why you guys are in such a hurry to collect these top-grade spirit materials, without little Uncle Master, this stone would have been snatched away long ago. Yes, Mo Ling did a good job on this matter. Given his status, there was no way Tao Lord Scarlet Star would apologize to Su Zimo. Therefore, he chuckled and said, Cough as expected of my junior brother. You've truly done the sect proud. Nangong Ling and the other 2 finally smiled. Unexpectedly, Tao Lord Scarlet Star seemed to have thought of something and suddenly turned around. Glaring at Ru Xian and the other 2, he scolded, Uncle Master is Uncle Master. What do you mean by little Uncle Master? In what way is he little? Look at the three of you. You have no manners at all. Change your ways from now on, do you hear me? Got it. Nangongling and the other two did not dare to rebut and gave a feeble acknowledgement. Gripping the lava crystal, Dao Lord Scarlet Star turned and walked into the hall, intending to hand the stone over to Dao Lord Extreme Fire first. In the depths of the hall, in a spirit pool filled with immortal chi, an essence spirit with a red glow sat upright. Just as Dao Lord Scarlet Star placed the lava crystal at the side, he heard Dao Lord Extreme Fire say indifferently, "You were quite the man earlier on." Ah! When Dao Lord Scarlet Star heard that Dao Lord Extreme Fire's tone did not sound right, he chuckled dryly. "Grandmaster, you must be joking. I'm merely teaching juniors a lesson." "Who are the juniors?" Dao Lord Extreme Fire asked again. All of them." Dao Lord Crimson Star felt a chill run down his spine and his gaze wavered without confidence. Dao Lord Extreme Fire's essence spirit walked out of the spirit pool slowly and said coldly, "Mo Ling is my disciple. He's in the same generation as your master, Tiancheng. You dare to refer to him as your junior brother?" Ah! Dao Lord Scarlet Star was shocked. In that case, he would have to address Mo Ling respectfully as Uncle Master. "How dare you teach your Uncle Master Mo Ling a lesson? Are you trying to defy the hierarchy and go against the ancestry?" Dao Lord Extreme Fire berated. With a thud, Dao Lord Scarlet Star knelt on the ground in fright and wanted to cry. This was great. Although he delivered the stone personally, not only did he not receive any praise, he was lambasted and even had an Uncle Master now. Chapter 923. Great Advantage. Chapter 923. Great Advantage. In front of the 100 Refinement Hall. Not long after he entered, Dao Lord Scarlet Star walked out dejectedly and looked at Su Zimo with a disgruntled expression. Su Zimo did not know what happened within the hall, but he felt a little creeped out by the way Dao Lord Scarlet Star was looking at him. Sigh. Dao Lord Scarlet Star sighed internally. At the thought of his Grandmaster's reprimand, he could only come before Su Zimo obediently. Under the gazes of Nangongling and his other two disciples, he bowed slightly and greeted as a junior. Taking a deep breath, he said, "Scarlet Star pays his respect to the little Uncle Master." After saying that, Dao Lord Scarlet Star felt his cheeks burn and wished he could dig a hole to hide in. Although he did not look up, he could guess the expressions of Nangongling and the other two. Su Zimo was a smart man. Instantly, he guessed that Dao Lord Scarlet Star must have been taught a lesson by Dao Lord Extreme Fire in the hall. Su Zimo did not care much about seniority. Furthermore, he was young and his cultivation realm was low. Now that he had gained such a great advantage, he felt a little embarrassed instead. He hurried forward and helped Dao Lord Scarlet Star up. "There's no need for that. If you don't mind, Senior, you can just call me by my name." "That won't do." Dao Lord Scarlet Star shook his head. Although he was displeased and indignant from the bottom of his heart, both he and the sect placed great importance on seniority and etiquette. He could not break the rules. Nangongling and the other two were at a loss and were stunned. How did their master end up bowing to greet Mo Ling as Uncle Master in the blink of an eye? In terms of seniority, wouldn't they have to call Mo Ling Granduncle Master? Master. Ru Xian hurried over and could not help but ask, "What's going on? Isn't Mo Ling your junior brother? Why did he suddenly become your Uncle Master?" Feeling aggrieved, Dao Lord Scarlet Star glared and hollered, "Why are you asking so many questions? Get lost." Subsequently, he called out to Ru Xian and the other two and said in a deep voice, "Listen up, you guys have to change the way you address him in the future. This is your Granduncle Master. Our seniority has dropped again." Nangongling and the other two exchanged glances and lamented internally with that single statement. Without much hesitation, they bowed to Su Zimo and greeted, "Greetings, Granduncle Master." To them, Uncle Master and Granduncle Master did not matter. Both were just titles. That was because they had already accepted Su Zimo in their hearts. On the other hand, Dao Lord Scarlet Star stood by the side, brooding. When he swept his gaze and saw that Dao Lord White Flames was about to take the opportunity to slip away, He hurried forward and pulled the latter over. Don't run either. We're of the same generation. You have to call him Uncle Master too. Now that Tao Lord Scarlet Star had found a companion, he felt slightly better and gloated. Tao Lord White Flames was the sect master of 100 Refinement Sect and had an esteemed status. It was even harder for him to address Su Zimo as Uncle Master. Little Uncle Master. Given the circumstances, he could only grit his teeth and shout. Eh. Right then, Ru Xian came over and pretended to be confused. Uncle Master is Uncle Master. What do you mean by Little Uncle Master? In what way is he little? Tao Lord Crimson Star blushed. That was what he had said to Ru Xian and the other two earlier on. To think that the tables would have turned and Ru Xian would come over to mock them instead. He is young in age, what's wrong? Tao Lord Scarlet Star straightened his neck and argued with a red face. He's only 100 years old and he's young to begin with. There's nothing wrong with us calling him Little Uncle Master. It was as though in his heart, the word little was the last bit of dignity he could fight for. Su Zimo smiled. Seniors, there's no need for that. If anyone else is around, you can just call me by my name. This was a huge leeway for the two of them. Otherwise, it would be truly awkward if the master of a sect had to pay his respects to a nascent soul younger than 200 years old in front of all the disciples. Thank you, Little Uncle Master. Tao Lord Scarlet Star gave an embarrassed smile and agreed. If there's nothing else, I'll head back first. Su Zimo bid farewell and turned to leave. Staying here would only make things more awkward. Nangong Ling and the other two bowed and bid farewell as well. Tao Lord Scarlet Star and Tao Lord White Flame stood at the entrance of the hall and exchanged glances. What happened in the morning was truly magical. For some reason, the two of them now had an Uncle Master. I'm sure you guys are indignant about acknowledging him as an Uncle Master. Right then, Tao Lord Extreme Fire's voice sounded in their minds. I wouldn't dare to. Tao Lord Scarlet Star shook his head hurriedly, afraid that he would be scolded by Tao Lord Extreme Fire again. Tao Lord White Flames added, It's nothing much. Since he's your disciple, he's our Uncle Master according to seniority. Tao Lord Extreme Fire chuckled. You said that you wouldn't dare. In other words, you're truly indignant in your heart. Tao Lord Crimson Star did not say anything. It was a silent acknowledgement. Tao Lord Extreme Fire did not reprimand him further and merely asked, Do you guys think that Nangong Ling and the other two are able to return unscathed because they were lucky and came across a peerless expert who rescued them without even leaving his name behind? Then what happened? Tao Lord Scarlet Star was stunned for a moment before grunting. Grandmaster, are you saying that Mo Ling, Little Uncle Master, saved him? He's a nascent soul. Even if he's strong and can suppress the paragons on the phenomenon ranking, can he fight against Dharma characteristic Tao Lords? Tao Lord White Flames nodded as well. It was clear that he did not believe that Su Zimo was behind this. That was a complete fantasy. Tao Lord Extreme Fire replied indifferently, Although I don't know the exact situation, it's definitely related to Mo Ling. If there was anyone in Tianhuang mainland who understood Su Zimo's capabilities the most, Tao Lord Extreme Fire was definitely one of them. Tao Lord Scarlet Star and Tao Lord White Flames exchanged glances. Although they did not refute him verbally, they thought otherwise. Tao Lord Extreme Fire continued, Perhaps, your impression of him will change after you two know his true identity. Perhaps, you'll believe me at that time. The two Tao Lords were intrigued. Tao Lord Scarlet Star asked, Grandmaster, what is Mo Ling's true identity? I can't tell you yet. Tao Lord Extreme Fire pondered deeply. However, I'm guessing that given his character, he won't be able to hide his identity for long. Upon hearing Tao Lord Extreme Fire's words, the two of them were even more curious. What sort of status did a nascent soul have to be so highly regarded by Tao Lord Extreme Fire? Tao Lord Extreme Fire sighed faintly and said meaningfully, One day, all of you will realize that you're the ones who gained a great advantage by acknowledging him as your Uncle Master. Ah! The two of them were even more puzzled. Why was it getting more ridiculous? Tao Lord Extreme Fire said, You guys can go. Prepare for the 1,000 Crane Tea Party a month later. I'm almost done with the reconstruction spirit materials. After the tea party, prepare to reconstruct my body. The two of them acknowledged and bid farewell. Before long, Tao Lord Extreme Fire's voice sounded once more. By the way, the book that Mo Ling is reading isn't some useless book. It's one of the 3 ancient sword arts, the heaven-slaying sword art. Little tiger, aren't you afraid of biting your tongue when you spouted those bold words? Heaven-slaying sword art. Tao Lord Scarlet Star shuddered and stood alone in the wind. Chapter 924. Tao Fire of the Immortal Sects. Chapter 924. Tao Fire of the Immortal Sects. Hellfire Hall. In the cold and sinister hall, a dark and sinister face was illuminated by the flickering candlelight. Before long, a cultivator of Hellfire Hall strode into the hall and knelt on one knee with cupped fists. Master, Uncle Yu and the 7 Void Reversion senior brothers have been found. They're all dead, right? The Hellfire Hall master said faintly, seemingly unsurprised. Right now, it was already noon. The fact that Uncle Yu and the others had not returned at this time meant that the interception had failed. However, he was puzzled. According to the news from their spies in 100 Refinement Sect, Nan Gongling's group of 4 did not have any Dharma characteristic experts following them to Wind Cloud City. How could Uncle Yu have failed in his attack? A name appeared in the mind of the Hellfire Hall master. Mo Ling. He frowned. That was impossible. According to reliable sources, Mo Ling was only at nascent soul realm and could not threaten Uncle Yu and the others. Bring the corpses up. The Hellfire Hall master composed himself and said. Several Hellfire Hall cultivators carried 8 corpses into the hall and placed them carefully on the ground before retreating. The Hellfire Hall master walked down the platform and arrived beside the 8 corpses with a slightly focused gaze. Lifespan exhaustion? The Hellfire Hall master frowned. What happened that caused Uncle Yu to die from an exhaustion of his lifespan? The way he died was way too strange. It was impossible for Uncle Yu to have released methods that would have exhausted his own lifespan on his own accord. The Hellfire Hall master swept his gaze across the other 7 corpses and his pupils constricted. The wounds on the 7 corpses were simple. Their glabellas were either pierced or their heads were smashed. There were no additional wounds on their bodies. They died extremely cleanly. The Hellfire Hall sniffed and his expression changed slightly, as though he had discovered something. Master, what's wrong? The cultivator standing at the front was the #1 weapon refinement genius of Hellfire Hall, Ming Han, who was about to compete with 100 Refinement Sect. There's demonic qi left behind. The Hellfire Hall master pondered deeply and said, What a domineering demonic qi. Ming Han frowned and asked, Did Uncle Yu and the others encounter an accident and were attacked by high-level fiend demons? It's possible. However, the Hellfire Hall master shook his head quickly. That's not right. If they were attacked by high-level fiend demons, those 4 juniors wouldn't have survived either. Why are their corpses missing? Right then, a disciple of Hellfire Hall sped over and knelt on the ground, greeting respectfully, Hallmaster, the spies of 100 Refinement Sect have sent news that Nan Gongling and the other 3 have returned to 100 Refinement Sect safe and sound. The face of the Hellfire Hall master darkened and 2 balls of dark flames burned in his eyes with killing intent. The disciple of Hellfire Hall lowered his head and trembled, not daring to speak. After a long time, the flames in the eyes of the Hellfire Hall master gradually dissipated as he waved his hand. You may leave. The disciple of Hellfire Hall felt as though he was pardoned and retreated swiftly. Master, don't worry. Ming Han said proudly, the 1,000 Crane Tea Party is in a month's time. At that time, I will definitely defeat Lu Hanyan and clear up the name of Hellfire Hall. Yes. The Hellfire Hall master nodded. As long as you win this weapon refinement battle, a super sect will step in for you. At that time, many factions will add fuel to the fire and 100 Refinement Sect's reputation will be tarnished in front of everyone. They will definitely be removed from the 4 unorthodox groups. Don't worry, Master. Ming Han said confidently, Lu Hanyan won't win. The Hellfire Hall master smiled sinisterly and narrowed his eyes, saying coldly, 100 Refinement Sect, let's see how you're going to win this round. After this experience, Nan Gongling and the other 2 no longer created any fusses. The 1,000 Crane Tea Party would begin in another month. Under Tao Lord Scarlet Star's urging, The three of them entered seclusion. Su Zimo had a peaceful life as well. Apart from comprehending the heaven-slaying sword art daily, he spent his days trying to condense the immortal Dao fire to practice the fire dermic arts that Dao Lord Extreme Fire imparted to him. Right now, he had already cultivated a Buddhist Dao fire. Although the Dao fire of the Buddhist monasteries condensed from the Scarlet Flame Heart Sutra was extraordinary, it was still no match for top-tier dermic arts. If he could condense another Dao fire, even if there were only 2 of the Samadhi Dao flames formed, its power would increase tremendously. Now that he was back in the cultivation world, it was inconvenient for him to reveal his demonic cultivation capabilities. That was the reason why it was extremely important for him to raise his combat strength by mastering some fire element dermic arts. A month passed by swiftly. This day, Su Zimo sat cross-D in his cave abode with his eyes closed. A golden flame floated around him and revolved slowly. His hands were placed naturally on his knees, palms facing the skies as he conjured hand seals repeatedly. Failure. Reconjure. Another failure. Reconjure again. He failed countless times. All of a sudden, a finger snap sounded. A scarlet wisp of flame appeared on Su Zimo's fingertip. Initially, it was flickering as though a gust of wind could extinguish it. Before long, the wisp of flame stabilized. Immortal Dao Fire success. Su Zimo was delighted as he looked at the wisp of scarlet flame. He smiled and flicked his finger. The scarlet flame floated and arrived before him, revolving around his body one after another with the golden flame. This move was also a fire elemental dermic art known as the Scarlet Flame Revolving Lantern. With the 2 flames surrounding him, he could attack and defend. Any enemy that tried to approach him would be burned by the flames. Little Granduncle Master, open the door. Suddenly, there was the sound of knocking. With a single thought from Su Zimo, the 2 balls of flames dissipated into the void. Thereafter, the door of the cave abode opened slowly as though it was being pulled by a pair of invisible hands. Ru Xian skipped in. Nangong Ling and Lu Hanyan followed closely behind. The 3 of them did not change much after a month. However, Lu Hanyan looked even more composed, as though she was prepared. Little Granduncle Master, let's go. You're the only one who can stand staying within your cave abode obediently. Every other cultivator can't wait. Ru Xian said, the 1,000 Crane Tea Party is about to be held. 100 Refinement Sect is setting off today. At that point, Su Zimo's heart stirred as well. This day had finally arrived. After 100 years, he could finally see those old friends again. If nothing went wrong, he should be able to see Ji Chengtian and Lang Ro at the 1,000 Crane Tea Party. The 3 of them had joined Ethereal Peak together and experienced many things. There was also Xiaoning and Night Spirit. He wondered how they were now after 100 years. Of course, there was another person. A cold glint flashed through Su Zimo's eyes before vanishing. Di'in. All the nascent soul paragons of the Middle Continent would gather at the 1,000 Crane Tea Party. Su Zimo believed that Di'in would not give this grand occasion a miss. If he encountered Di'in at the 1,000 Crane Tea Party, he would definitely find an opportunity to kill Di'in on the spot. Of course, 100 years had passed. He had grown rapidly and his combat strength had increased significantly as well. Di'in would not remain stagnant either. Su Zimo was filled with anticipation as he chanted silently, Di'in, I believe you won't disappoint me. Chapter 925, 1,000 Crane Sect. Chapter 925, 1,000 Crane Sect. 100 Refinement Sect. The cultivators of the sects that were attending the 1,000 Crane Tea Party were already gathered in front of the 100 Refinement Grand Hall. There were more than 1,000 of them and almost all of them were nascent souls. Su Zimo was among them. That was the foundation of a super sect. 100 Refinement Sect was merely a weapon refinement sect and there were already more than 1,000 nascent souls just like that. Furthermore, that was not all. It was easy to imagine the strength of the ancient super sects such as the 9 Immortal sects and 7 Fiend sects that focused on combat cultivation. There were less than 100 nascent souls in Ethereal Peak. Surveying his surroundings, Su Zimo looked at Nangong Ling and the other 2 beside him and asked softly, It seems like there's only going to be one void reversion accompanying us to Thousand Crane Sect. Following Su Zimo's gaze, there was a void reversion standing in front of Dao Lord White Flames and Dao Lord Scarlet Star, bowing slightly with a respectful greeting. The person listened to the advice of the two Dao Lords and nodded from time to time with a respectful expression. When Ru Xian heard that, she volunteered to explain everything to Su Zimo. The Thousand Crane Tea Party was a grand cultivation event held by Thousand Crane Sect once every 1,000 years. It was a rare opportunity. As the name suggested, the theme of the Thousand Crane Tea Party was tea drinking. This tea was not an ordinary tea from the mortal world. It was mystic tea that was extremely beneficial to the essence spirits of nascent souls who consumed it. Therefore, most of the people attending the Thousand Crane Tea Party were nascent souls. Of course, the major sects and factions might send one or two void reversions to accompany them to the tea party. But no matter what, the paragons of the nascent soul realm were definitely the main characters of this tea party. Ru Xian said, "That's why it's useless for so many void reversions to go. I heard that the Thousand Crane Sect's master hosts the tea parties personally. He's a Dharma characteristic, so nothing will go wrong." Su Zimo nodded. He finally understood. Ru Xian then pointed to the void reversion not far away. "That's Dao Being Yu Ding, the sect master's eldest disciple. He's at the perfected void reversion realm and is quite good at weapon refinement and combat strength." Nangong Ling added, "Senior brother Yu Ding is calm and composed in handling matters. Seems like he should be the one leading the group this time round." As he said that, the two Dao Lords, White Flames and Scarlet Star, seemed to have finished their instructions. Dao Being Yu Ding turned around and walked towards Su Zimo's group of 4. Dao Being Yu Ding was more than 3,000 years old and was in his prime. He arrived before Su Zimo with a calm demeanor and bowed slightly. "Greetings, Grand Uncle Master. I'm young, there's no need to be so polite, Dao brother." Su Zimo helped Dao Being Yu Ding up gently and nodded with a smile. Although Dao Being Yu Ding was stern and reserved, he was extremely well-mannered and sent a voice transmission. "In name, I'll be leading the expedition. However, both Master and the lineage leader have just instructed me to follow your decisions should anything happen. I'm not from the Middle Continent nor have I been to Thousand Crane Sect. I don't know much about everything. It's fine for you to lead the expedition alone, Dao brother." It was not that Su Zimo was being polite. He truly did not know anything about the Thousand Crane Tea Party. Despite Su Zimo's words, Dao Being Yu Ding did not have any hint of disdain. He bowed politely once more before turning to the group of cultivators. Dao Being Yu Ding pressed his palms against the air without saying anything, and the noisy nascent souls below quickly quietened down. "On this trip to Thousand Crane Sect, I hope that all of you fellow sect mates will take care of one another and abide by the rules. Don't embarrass the sect. Furthermore, we have a weapon refinement fight with Hellfire Hall. At that time, all of you must cheer for Junior Sister Lu." "Understood." Everyone agreed readily. "Let's go." With a wave of his hand, Dao Being Yu Ding summoned a gigantic spirit vessel from his storage bag. It floated in front of the Grand Hall and he was the first to leap in. Many nascent souls followed closely behind. Su Zimo's group of 4 followed suit. The spirit vessel tore through the air and soon disappeared above 100 Refinement Sect, turning into a black that gradually journeyed into the distance. Dao Lord White Flames and Dao Lord Scarlet Star stood with their hands behind their backs, looking at the spirit vessel that was gradually disappearing into the distance with deep worry on their faces. Dao Lord Scarlet Star murmured, "I have a feeling that something big is going to happen at Thousand Crane Tea Party this time round. I hope Han Yen can win this round." "Sigh, I've been feeling uneasy recently as well." Dao Lord White Flames shook his head slightly. "This tea party will be watched by everyone. If Han Yen loses, our 100 Refinement Sect's reputation will definitely suffer." Dao Lord White Flame said worriedly, "I'm just worried that someone will add fuel to the fire and remove us from the 4 unorthodox groups at this tea party. By that time, even if Grandmaster Extreme Fire were to reconstruct his body and reappear, it would be too late." Right then, Dao Lord Extreme Fire's calm voice sounded from the halls. "Come in, both of you." The 2 Dao Lords hurriedly entered the hall. "There are a few letters here. Deliver them to them personally without any mistake." The 2 of them received the letters and scanned through them. When they saw the Dao titles written, they were shocked. Go on. Dao Lord Extreme Fire said indifferently, it's time to tell some old friends that I'm back. It was already close to half a day after they set off at dawn. Everyone from 100 Refinement Sect rode on their spirit vessels and entered 1,000 Crane Sect's territory. Before they even arrived at 1,000 Crane Sect, they could already see cranes circling in midair and chirping softly, welcoming the guests in a warm manner. When he saw those cranes, Su Zimo could not help but be reminded of the old Immortal Crane and Ching Ching of Ethereal Peak. Lu Hanyan noticed that and said with a smile, Granduncle Master, these cranes aren't real demon beast. Ha! Su Zimo was surprised. Lu Hanyan beckoned gently and a crane chirped softly. It landed beside her slowly and extended its beak, rubbing Lu Hanyan's arm gently in an extremely obedient manner. Lu Hanyan patted the crane's head gently. The crane disappeared and turned into a talisman that floated down slowly. Thereafter, Lu Hanyan tossed the talisman into the air and it transformed into a crane once more and flew away. The transformation of the talisman was truly miraculous. Su Zimo could not help but exclaim, as expected of 1,000 Crane Sect. After a while more, everyone could already see the entrance of 1,000 Crane Sect. Who's up ahead? Please show me your sect badge. 2,000 Crane Sect disciples leaped forward and bowed slightly, blocking the spirit vessel of 100 Refinement Sect. Dao being Yu Ding was naturally the person to liaise for such matters. 100 Refinement Sect and 1,000 Crane Sect were both from the 4 unorthodox groups and were extremely familiar with one another. This was merely a simple formality. Su Zimo noticed that the 2,000 Crane Sect disciples who were welcoming the guests were both women. They were extraordinary and charming. Ru Xian chuckled. Granduncle Master, most of the cultivators of 1,000 Crane Sect are beauties. You have to make good use of this opportunity. I heard that Fairy Long Row of 1,000 Crane Sect is a peerless beauty. She's cold as ice and doesn't have the slightest bit of mortal aura. She's like a fairy banished from the Moon Palace. Nangong Ling said, I wonder if we're lucky to be able to catch a glimpse of her during this trip. Although Lu Hanyan had a calm personality and was aloof from worldly affairs, she could not help but snort when she heard that. Nangong Ling shuddered in fear. Su Zimo was in a great mood at the thought of meeting an old friend. He patted the latter on the shoulder and said half-jokingly, Good luck. Chapter 926, Fierce Battle. Chapter 926, Fierce Battle. Upon entering 1,000 Crane Sect with Dao being Yu Ding, one could see towering mountains with lucent green waters and lush vegetation. A few 1,000 feet tall waterfalls fell and water splashed everywhere, creating a faint mist that rose densely, resembling a paradise. 100 Refinement Sect gave off an ancient metallic feeling. As for 1,000 Crane Sect, it was more like an ethereal immortal palace, a paradise on earth. Su Zimo's gaze shifted and he saw an ancient tree uprooting from the ground in a spacious courtyard far away. It was upright and had luxuriant leaves. The crown of the tree was lush and gave off a clear fragrance. Even from 1,000 feet away, he could still smell a faint fragrance. The fragrance jolted everyone from 100 Refinement Sect, and it was as though their essence spirits had condensed a little in an instant. If he was not wrong, this should be the legendary mystic tea tree from the primordial era. Its reputation precedes its presence. Indeed, it's mystical. Su Zimo nodded slightly. If these were the effects upon a faint whiff of the mystic tea tree's fragrance, upon consumption of a cup of mystic tea, the benefits would be even more obvious. After absorbing the massive life essence of the 1,000-year blood sea, Su Zimo's cultivation realm had already reached the peak of late-stage nascent soul. After a few more battles and 3 months of consolidation cultivation, he was only missing an opportunity to break through to perfected nascent soul. If he could drink a cup of mystic tea, there was a high chance that he could break through. Right then, Ru Xian said, there are only so many tea leaves. There's a limit to the number of mystic tea. Not every nascent soul realm paragon will get the chance to drink a cup. Furthermore, little Granduncle Master, take a look. Su Zimo followed Ru Xian's finger and focused his gaze. Ru Xian said, the quality of the tea leaves on the mystic tea tree is different. The tea leaves at the tip of the tree are the most tender and the effect of refining one's essence spirit is shocking. It's also known as a supreme grade mystic tea. True enough. There were 5 leaves on the top of the mystic tea tree. They were emerald green and crystalline like the most beautiful treasures in the world. Ru Xian continued, however, there are only a few cups of supreme-grade mystic tea. Nascent souls who are qualified to drink this tea are all geniuses among geniuses. This was not only a great opportunity, it was also a supreme honor. To be able to drink a cup of supreme-grade mystic tea was not inferior to being ranked top 10 on the phenomenon ranking. Lu Hongyan smiled. It's already a great opportunity if we can get to drink a cup of mystic tea. We can only dream about the supreme-grade mystic tea. At the side, Nangong Ling said softly, "Little Granduncle Master, don't worry. Given your strength, you'll definitely have a chance to get a cup of mystic tea for this 1,000-crane tea party. If not, I'll give you mine." Ha! Su Zimo was slightly surprised. Nangong Ling explained, "This is a tacit rule of the tea party. Cultivators of the previous phenomenon ranking are all eligible for a cup of mystic tea." Ever since the battle at Wind Cloud City, Nangong Ling's attitude towards Su Zimo had changed drastically. Now, he even offered the mystic tea. Su Zimo burst into laughter and waved it off, teasing, "That's not necessary. You can give it to your junior sister Han Yen." Heh! Upon hearing that, Nangong Ling blushed and rubbed his hands in embarrassment, as though Su Zimo had read his mind. "Granduncle Master." Lu Hongyan blushed as well and spat softly. "Look, Snowdrift Valley is here." Suddenly, a cultivator beside him exclaimed, "Tiske, they're all beauties. What a feast for the eyes." Some cultivators were lecherous and almost drooled at the sight. "I heard that perfected Lord Lingbai of Snowdrift Valley is here. He seems to be number 20 on the phenomenon ranking, and one of the few male cultivators in Snowdrift Valley." "That's the one. What a blessing to be surrounded by a group of Snowdrift Valley women. What's there to see about men? I heard that Fairy Luo Xue is the leader of Snowdrift Valley's expedition this time round. She's a famous beauty in the Middle Continent." Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat at the mention of Fairy Luo Xue. In the ancient battlefield 100 years ago, the nascent soul that led Snowdrift Valley was none other than Fairy Luo Xue. She was one of the few nascent souls that survived among the 13 that were present back then. Su Zimo looked over. Snowdrift Valley was driving a gigantic frost spirit vessel over slowly with a chilling aura. The person in the lead was dressed in fluttering white robes with black hair. Standing at the bow of the ship, she was pure and elegant. It was none other than Fairy Luo Xue from 100 years ago. Back in Myriad Phenomenon City, Fairy Luo Xue had helped Su Zimo. Furthermore, she did not choose to escape against the massacre of the Rakshasa and God race. Instead, she chose to stay and fight against the two races. Although Su Zimo was not too familiar with Fairy Luo Xue, he had a good impression of her. After 100 years, Fairy Luo Xue had already cultivated to the Void Reversion realm. Although she was severely injured during the battle in Myriad Phenomenon City, she took the opportunity to break through to Void Reversion realm and became the youngest Void Reversion in the sect. Many cultivators in the surroundings exclaimed when they saw Fairy Luo Xue's face. Many gazes gathered over. Su Zimo was unassuming among the 100 Refinement Sect cultivators, and naturally would not attract Fairy Luo Xue's attention. Apart from Snowdrift Valley and 100 Refinement Sect. In that short period of time, many sects and factions arrived at 1,000 Crane Sect. Su Zimo had already seen quite a number of upper sects of the cultivation world. There were a total of 108 upper sects in Tianhuang mainland. There were 10 in the north region alone, and there were dozens in the most majestic and flourishing middle continent. Without surprise, all these upper sects would send their perfected lords for the 1,000 Crane Tea Party. Have you heard? The 1,000 Crane Tea Party this time round is watched keenly by everybody. It's lauded as the grandest cultivation occasion in the past 1,000 years, and many major events are happening. Isn't the biggest event about the weapon refinement fight between 100 Refinement Sect and Hellfire Hall? What else is there? Hee, you're way too clueless. A cultivator said mysteriously, I heard that a month ago, a few major battles broke out in Wind Cloud City. Cheng Peng of Heavenly Dipper Sect was crippled and Jian Wuzong was beaten so badly that he could not even manage to withdraw his startling dermic sword. Not only did he lose his sword, he was utterly humiliated. Furthermore, both of those paragons were defeated by a single person. Which paragon is so strong? Could it be Yi Tiancheng? It's a nascent soul of 100 refinement sect. Is that true? That's impossible, right? Since when did 100 refinement sect produce such a ferocious person? Why haven't I heard of him before? Many cultivators were discussing this matter as well and looked towards 100 refinement sect. Su Zimo had a calm expression and looked straight ahead. I heard that Heavenly Dipper sect and Sword sect were enraged when they heard about this. They've sent their nascent soul paragons to retrieve their dignity. There's going to be a fierce battle at this tea party. If Jian Wuzong was defeated, which other nascent soul cultivator is there in Sword sect? Man, you don't know about that at all. Have you heard of the phenomenon ranking from 100 years ago? I've heard a little about it. It said that a catastrophe happened during the phenomenon ranking, and more than half of the paragons on the phenomenon ranking were killed. Yes, a successor of Sword sect who was ranked in the top 10 of the phenomenon ranking 100 years ago has appeared. His name is Hang Qiuyu and his cultivation has advanced after that catastrophe. It said that he's even stronger than Jian Wuzong. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat when he heard that name. Another old friend. Chapter 927, Scheme. Chapter 927, Scheme. In the elementary ancient battlefield, Hang Qiuyu was tragically defeated by Su Zimo. In the phenomenon ranking 100 years ago, Hang Qiuyu was no match for Dugu Jian and was ranked 8th. The gap between him and Su Zimo was even greater. However, any paragon that survived that calamity would experience an unimaginable transformation. It was the same for Hang Qiuyu. The reason why Sword sect dared to send Hang Qiuyu despite Jian Wuzong's tragic defeat to Su Zimo, that was how much confidence they had in the former. However, neither Sword sect nor Hang Qiuyu realized who they were about to challenge. Perfected Lord Panglon of Heavenly Dipper sect is here as well. Panglon? That sounds familiar. He was the number 1 on the phenomenon ranking 400 years ago. I heard that he's already half a step into the void reversion realm and no one knows his current strength. Fufu, that nascent soul of 100 refinement sect is doomed. That's normal. 100 refinement sect is about to be removed from the 4 unorthodox groups. Who would care about them? Nangong Ling and the other 2 looked at Su Zimo and were secretly worried. The figures discussed by the surrounding cultivators were all notorious experts who had been famous for a long time. Even the top of the phenomenon ranking from 400 years ago had appeared. All 3 of them were worried for Su Zimo. What surprised the 3 of them was that Su Zimo's expression had not changed the entire time when he heard those discussions. His eyes were like an ancient well without any emotions. Hang Qiuyu? Number 1 of the phenomenon ranking 400 years ago? None of them seemed to be able to stir his emotions. Nangong Ling lamented internally. Little Granduncle Master is too young and probably hasn't heard of these experts. Sigh, he's like a newborn calf. Ru Xian blinked her eyes and muttered internally, is Little Granduncle Master a little crazy? Why isn't he reacting? The cultivators of the various major sects and 100 refinement sect headed to the resting place under the lead of the 1,000 crane sect female cultivators. Along the way, many cultivators discussed excitedly. You guys were not referring to the greatest event yet. Right then, a cultivator said, pretending to be profound. Tell me what else is there? Someone asked hurriedly. After beating around the bush, the cultivator coughed gently and said slowly, I heard that Chaos Essence Sect and 1,000 Crane Sect are going to have a marriage alliance. Ah, who and who? Yi Tiancheng and Fairy Lang Ro, of course. I heard that Yi Tiancheng is going to propose in public. Oh my! A series of sighs and thumping sounds could be heard. Su Zimo frowned and turned to ask, who is this Yi Tiancheng? Why does he sound a little familiar? Nangong Ling and the other 2 looked at Su Zimo as though they were looking at a monster. Ru Xian said, Little Granduncle Master, what's with your memory? He's the top of the phenomenon ranking this time round and created an unprecedented golden core phenomenon. How do you not remember him? Oh, is that so? Su Zimo replied casually. No wonder his name sounds familiar. Nangong Ling and the other 2 were speechless. The influence of the phenomenon ranking was immense. All the cultivators present could name any cultivator on the phenomenon ranking with great familiarity, as though they knew it at the back of their heads, let alone the number one of the phenomenon ranking. Many cultivators even remembered the names of those in the past 10 phenomenon rankings. Furthermore, Tiancheng was the top of the Golden Core phenomenon ranking that had just ended. However, how could the three of them know that Su Zimo was neither bothered with the phenomenon ranking and nascent soul paragons, let alone remember their names? The only person he was interested in was Di. When he saw that Nan Gongling and the other two were still staring at him with strange gazes, Su Zimo smiled. There are so many paragons. It's normal to not remember them all. But Tiancheng is different. Ru Xian said, he's truly strong. He ascended Myriad Phenomenon Peak all the way and suppressed his peers, creating an unprecedented Golden Core phenomenon. Little Granduncle Master, I'm afraid you don't understand how strong he is because you've never seen him in action. Nan Gongling nodded as well. Even though he's only a single rank above the second on the phenomenon ranking, I feel that there's definitely a huge difference in their combat strength. Lu Hanyan said, I'm afraid only Tiancheng is worthy of Fairy Lang Ro. Su Zimo was silent. If Lang Ro could find a Dao companion that she liked, Su Zimo would be truly happy for her. However, for some reason, Su Zimo felt that something was amiss. The number one of the phenomenon ranking and Fairy Lang Ro. Those two are truly a match made in heaven, a cultivator beside them lamented. Hee hee. The first person who spoke sneered, I don't think so. A group of people hurried over and asked, huh? What's the matter? Is there something behind the scenes? The person looked around and lowered his voice, saying softly, I heard from some sources that Fairy Lang Ro did not agree to the marriage at all. It was Thousand Crane Sect's sect master, her master, who agreed to it. Su Zimo frowned. What's wrong with that? The path of cultivation is long and boring. It's not impossible for the two of them to fall in love after spending time together. Someone curled his lips in disdain. Tisk. The first cultivator sneered. What do you know? I heard that there's a scheme behind Tiancheng coming here to become Dao companions with Fairy Lang Ro. What scheme? Everyone asked. Don't forget that Tiancheng is Di Yin's junior brother, and the two of them are known as the Chaos Essence twin paragons. However, Di Yin and the top of the phenomenon ranking 100 years ago are mortal enemies. The cultivator continued, as for that Zimo or whatsoever, he should be dead by now. However, his friends are still alive and are good friends with Fairy Lang Ro. Hee hee. Although the cultivator did not continue, many of them revealed contemplative expressions. Su Zimo's expression gradually turned cold. I've got it. Nan Gongling suddenly said. Di Yin once declared that he wanted to kill those people but he failed. Later on, the successor of Tomb Sect and Puppet Sect hid in the sects respectively and refused to show themselves. Di Yin did not have the chance to attack either. The reason why Tiancheng and Fairy Lang Ro are getting married is to force these people to appear. Lu Hanyan nodded as well. I reckon that Tiancheng is going to help his senior brother take care of them after they appear. In that case, Fairy Lang Ro is way too pitiful. Ru Xian sighed and said indignantly, it's all that Zimo guy's fault. To think that he's the number one of the phenomenon ranking and the strongest monster incarnate in history. In my opinion, he's the weakest number one on the Golden Core phenomenon ranking in history. The more she spoke, the angrier she got. Turning around, she tugged at Su Zimo's arm and said angrily, I think that Zimo guy is even weaker than Little Granduncle Master. Lu Hanyan said, you can't say that. We're only speculating right now. Perhaps Tiancheng and Fairy Lang Ro are truly in love. Right then a cultivator asked, why do you think Thousand Crane Sect's sect master agreed to this marriage? She probably wants to build a good relationship with Chaos Essence Sect. The combat strength of the four unorthodox groups is average. Without the backing of an Immortal sect, it's easy for them to be eliminated. For example, look at 100 Refinement Sect. Aren't they about to be removed from the four unorthodox groups? Chapter 928. Reunion. Chapter 928. Reunion. Ru Xian was truly enraged when she heard that and could not help but shout, Hey! What nonsense are you guys spouting? Our 100 Refinement Sect is still one of the four unorthodox groups. Since when have we been removed? The cultivators that were discussing came from an upper sect of the Middle Continent,
Tyrant Emperor Mountain.
A nascent soul of Tyrant Emperor Mountain said in a strange tone. "Io, 100 refinement sect sure is impressive. We can't even remark anything about them anymore. Even the 9 immortal sects are not so overbearing, right?"
You!
Ru Xian clenched her fists in anger and gritted her teeth.
You were the one who started the rumors first.
Dao being Yu Ding, who was at the front, leaped up and arrived between the two major sections. With a calm expression, he looked at the group of cultivators from Tyrant Emperor Mountain and said slowly, "Right now, 100 Refinement Sect is still one of the 4 unorthodox groups and no one is allowed to slander it. Furthermore, even if our 100 Refinement Sect is removed from the 4 unorthodox groups, our foundation is still greater than Tyrant Emperor Mountain." The cultivator leading the group of Tyrant Emperor Mountain was also a void reversion. Seemingly wary of Dao being Yu Ding, the man turned around and shook his head, indicating for his sect's cultivators to stop discussing. Dao being Yu Ding turned and left. A nascent soul of Tyrant Emperor Mountain sneered and muttered softly, "Let's see how long more 100 Refinement Sect can continue to be cocky for." Right then, Su Zimo's gaze shifted to a courtyard not far away. There were many people gathered around and 2 female cultivators of Thousand Crane Sect stood in front of the door, seemingly guarding the courtyard. At the entrance, a white-robed man was bowing with a sincere expression, telling 2 female cultivators of Thousand Crane Sect something. When he saw the white-robed man, the coldness in Su Zimo's eyes dissipated and turned gentle, revealing a smile that he had not shown for a long time. "I'll go take a look over there. You guys can follow everyone else first." Su Zimo pointed to the courtyard and said to Nan Gongling and the other 2. "I'll go too." Seeing that there was entertainment, Ru Xian decided to take a look and relieve her frustrated mood at the same time. Dao being Yu Ding turned around. When he saw that Su Zimo was the one who suggested it, he did not stop them and merely nodded. "Be careful." Nodding with a smile, Su Zimo leaped off the spirit vessel and sped towards the courtyard. The few nascent souls of Tyrant Emperor Mountain exchanged glances and left their group as well, following in secret. The white-robed man was none other than Jicheng Tian, who had joined Elixir Yang Sect and was originally a disciple of Ethereal Peak. "Fellow Taoists, may I trouble you to go in and inform her about my arrival? I'll be extremely grateful." Before he arrived, Su Zimo heard Jicheng Tian's voice. A Thousand Crane Sect female cultivator guarding the courtyard shook her head. "Leave. Senior Sister Lang Ro won't see you." Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. In that case, Lang Ro lived in this courtyard. Jicheng Tian refused to give up and bowed once more, saying sincerely, "Fellow Taoists, just say that Jicheng Tian of Elixir Yang Sect requests a meeting and Fairy Lang Ro will definitely agree to it." The other Thousand Crane Sect female cultivator said indifferently, "I'd advise you to give up. Senior Sister Lang Ro won't meet anyone before the Thousand Crane Tea Party. Fairy Lang Ro is beautiful and peerless. She's not someone you can see just because you want to. Fufu, countless paragons come to seek an audience with Fairy Lang Ro every day. Who are you, Jicheng Tian? How refreshing." Even when perfected Lord Feng Xing of Zephyr Thunder Palace, who was number 7 on the phenomenon ranking, did not manage to get to meet Fairy Lang Ro when he came yesterday. "Who do you think you are, Jicheng Tian?" Many cultivators who were watching from the sidelines crossed their arms and sneered in an extremely nasty manner. Jicheng Tian's expression was terrible as he glared at those cultivators and said in a deep voice, "I, Jicheng Tian, am not some famous paragon. However, I am extremely close friends with Lang Ro and nobody can compare to me." "My, someone is even getting cocky now." A 5 Elements Sect cultivator mocked. "What's there to be cocky about? You're someone who is about to die. Do you think you'll get to return alive after coming to attend the Thousand Crane Tea Party?" The 5 Elements Sect was also one of the upper sects of the Middle Continent. Another person said, "I advise you to scram back to Elixir Yang Sect right now. You might still be able to make it in time. After that, hide like a coward for the rest of your life and don't come out. Otherwise, you won't be able to keep that head of yours." Ha ha ha. Many cultivators burst into laughter. Jicheng Tian grit his teeth and clenched his fists tightly without saying anything, trembling slightly. A few decades ago, he was severely injured by Diin and almost died. Thereafter, he stayed in the sect and did not come out. He had nothing to say now that he was being mocked about this matter. However, when he heard about the marriage alliance between Lang Rou and Yi Tiancheng, he knew he could not sit idly by the sidelines. He wanted to ask Lang Rou about her intentions. If Lang Rou was a willing participant, he would naturally wish the best for her from the bottom of his heart. However, if Lang Rou was forced, he would stand out no matter what. Even if it meant risking his life. It's just a bunch of mad dogs barking. There's no need to bother, fellow Daoist. Not far away, a green-robed man walked over with a man and two women behind him. The green-robed man had a rough expression, but his eyes were clear as he looked at Ji Chengtian with cupped fists and a smile. For some reason, Ji Chengtian felt that this person's gaze and smile was heartwarming. Ji Chengtian returned the greeting with cupped fists and forced a smile. Thank you for your consolation, fellow Daoist. Who are you? Who are you calling mad dogs? Oh, they are cultivators of 100 Refinement Sect. A nascent soul of 5 elements Sect sneered. 100 Refinement Sect is about to be removed from the 4 unorthodox groups and you still have the mood to be nosy. Before Su Zimo could reply, Ru Xian could not help but retort, we're only scolding mad dogs here. If the shoe fits, wear it. Foo-foo, little girl, you were sure cocky earlier on, weren't you? Right then, a mocking laughter sounded behind Su Zimo's group of 4. A few nascent souls of Tyrant Emperor Mountain walked over. Their leader was burly and had cultivated to perfected nascent soul. He glared at Su Zimo's group with a ferocious expression. Yu Wei, we're in Thousand Crane Sect's territory. What are you trying to do? Nangong Ling's figure flashed and stood in front of Ru Xian, guarding with a focused expression. Yu Wei of Tyrant Emperor Mountain was also a nascent soul paragon who was ranked on the phenomenon ranking 200 years ago. Although his ranking was not high, he had cultivated for a long time and his cultivation realm was higher than Nangong Ling's. His combat strength was not to be underestimated. Yu Wei clenched his fists and twisted his neck, letting out crackling sounds as he laughed sinisterly. I was wary of Dao being Yu Ding of 100 Refinement Sect earlier on and let you guys off. Now, since you came out on your own, don't blame me for teaching you a lesson. The two of them were at loggerheads and were on the brink of fighting. The Thousand Crane Sect female cultivators in front of the courtyard had no intention of stopping them either. Abrupt clashes were inevitable when paragons gathered. As long as both parties did not cause too much trouble that might result in deaths, they would basically watch idly by the sidelines. Su Zimo was expressionless. Now that 100 Refinement Sect has reached this stage, all the little clowns and scoundrels want to join in and add fuel to the fire. Ha 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 ha. Yu Wei grinned widely and said, it's good that you know. Your 100 Refinement Sect is finished and I'm going to bully you. Very good. Su Zimo nodded and turned towards Yu Wei, saying indifferently, since that's the case, don't blame me. Chapter 929. Nasty Tongue. Chapter 929. Nasty Tongue. To be fair, Nangong Ling and the other two did not dare to attack in this situation. Against a nascent soul like Yu Wei who has been famous for a long time, they were even more wary. However, who was Su Zimo? He was once the number 1 of the phenomenon ranking. A monster incarnate who caused many paragons and super sects to tremble in fear. A few decades ago, Di Yin hunted down his best friends. And now, Di Yin's junior brother of the same sect had come to Thousand Crane Sect to force a marriage. Everything had truly incurred Su Zimo's wrath. Although he did not join 100 Refinement Sect, as Dao Lord Extreme Fire's disciple, there was no way he was going to watch someone trample on 100 Refinement Sect. When Yu Wei saw Su Zimo walk over and the two of them were getting closer, his eyes could not help but reveal a hint of cruelty. As an upper sect of the Middle Continent, Tyrant Emperor Mountain specialized in body tempering. The legacy cultivation technique of Tyrant Emperor Mountain, Heaven and Earth Tyrant Emperor Manual, was the establishment foundation of the sect. Although it could not compare to Glass Palace's Glass Heart Sutra and Diamond Monastery's Diamond Body, it was also one of the top cultivation techniques in Tianhuang mainland that produced a shocking physique. To Yu Wei, Su Zimo was courting death by walking towards him and closing the distance. Yu Wei laughed sinisterly and said coldly, we're not allowed to fight to the death at this Thousand Crane Tea Party. However, I can cripple you. The moment he said that, Yu Wei's eyes widened and his blood chi burst forth. His glabella shone and dermic powers surged. Tyrant Emperor Finger. Yu Wei shouted and raised his arm, extending his index finger. As blood chi surged and dermic powers gathered, right in front of countless gazes, the finger turned incomparably thick like a steel rod. Swoosh! The finger tore through the air and stabbed towards Su Zimo's face with a terrifying aura. Tyrant Emperor Finger. A top-tier dermic art of the Heaven and Earth Tyrant Emperor Manual. Its power is shocking. Yu Wei is even scarier than he was 50 years ago. He is truly a ruthless person. The moment he attacked, he had no intention of testing the waters. With his blood chi and dermic powers released at the same time, the power of that dermic art has already reached its limits. Su Zimo's expression was unchanged and he did not even stop in his tracks. He only raised his palm when the finger was right in front of him. Without releasing his blood chi or dermic powers, he grabbed the finger casually. Yu Wei's expression changed. His Tyrant Emperor Finger could not continue pushing. Not only could he not push down, it was already too late for Yu Wei to retract his Tyrant Emperor Finger as well. Break! With a cold expression, Su Zimo hollered and exerted strength in his palm, bending it down. Snap! The piercing sound of bones breaking could be heard. In front of everyone, Yu Wei's finger was snapped by Su Zimo. The broken bone was exposed and stuck to the flesh in a frightening manner. Ah! Yu Wei's eyes widened and he paused for a moment before letting out a hysterical scream. The blood drained from his face and in the blink of an eye, he broke out in cold sweat. The Heaven Earth Tyrant Emperor Manual and Tyrant Emperor Finger were nothing in front of Su Zimo. Stepping forward, Su Zimo pressed his palm gently against Yu Wei's chest. Crack! Yu Wei's chest caved in instantly and his clothes were torn. A gigantic palm print appeared on his chest and his flesh exploded. Yu Wei spat out a mouthful of blood and his eyes dimmed. He fell backwards and landed heavily on the ground, kicking up a cloud of dust. Even though he was on the ground, his body was still convulsing and the sound of bones cracking could be heard. The crowd was shocked. To think that a nascent soul expert like Yu Wei would be crippled after a single exchange. His essence spirit was not destroyed and he managed to survive. However, even after his body was recuperated, he would suffer from injuries and would not be able to achieve a full recovery. Su Zimo's palm merely pushed against Yu Wei's chest. However, that palm contained a high level of powerful tidal might that surged through Yu Wei's body layer after layer, shattering most of his bones. As Yu Wei had said, fighting to the death was not allowed in Thousand Crane Sect. However, Su Zimo crippled Yu Wei the moment he attacked. Everyone was speechless. They had just lamented that Yu Wei was ruthless and did not expect to meet someone even more ruthless. Initially, some cultivators who wanted to take advantage of the fact that 100 Refinement Sect was not as famous as before became hesitant. The remaining cultivators of tyrannical Emperor Mountain looked at Su Zimo with fear in their eyes, cowering and not daring to advance. Just you wait. Finally, a nascent soul of Tyrant Emperor Mountain stood out and said weakly, "The road ahead is long. Just you wait and see." With that said, everyone from Tyrant Emperor Mountain supported Yu Wei, who was screaming in pain, and fled. Who else wants to step on the head of 100 Refinement Sect? Su Zimo surveyed his surroundings with a piercing gaze. The cultivators present exchanged glances and felt their courage weaken. Instinctively, they lowered their heads and avoided Su Zimo's eyes. There were at least hundreds of nascent souls present, but none of them dared to step forward. The mockery from earlier on had vanished as well. Ru Xian stood at the side with a look of admiration and stars in her eyes. She looked intoxicated and almost lunged forward. "Hey!" Lu Hanyan could not stand it any longer and nudged Ru Xian gently, sending a voice transmission, "Be careful, you're drooling." Ru Xian blushed and sent a voice transmission with her spirit consciousness. "It's a pity that little Granduncle Master looks ordinary and boorish. He'd be absolutely perfect if he was a little more handsome." "Lass, how can you say something like that without any shame?" Lu Hanyan spat softly. Ru Xian looked nervous and said hurriedly, "Senior sister, you already have senior brother Nangong. Don't fight with me for him." All right. I won't fight with you. He's all yours," Lu Hanyan said exasperatedly. Ru Xian's thoughts were flying as she fantasized alone. She murmured, "Senior sister, after little granduncle master and I become Dao companions, the hierarchy of our seniority will be messed up, right? Won't master have to bow to me? Wow, the thought of that sure is exciting." Ru Xian laughed as she thought. This child has gone mad. Lu Hanyan shook her head. On the other hand, the group of people from 5 Elements Sect who mocked Ji Chengtian earlier on felt embarrassed. Finally, someone sneered, "Fufu, your 100 Refinement Sect won't be able to survive for long. At that time, we won't even have to do anything and someone will naturally deal with you guys." Su Zimo turned slightly and glared at the person who spoke. The 5 Elements Sect cultivator felt his hair stand on end when Su Zimo glared at him. The person had the intention to retreat and muster his courage to say, "You don't have to look at me. When the 1,000 Crane Tea Party starts, we'll see how 100 Refinement Sect is trampled into the ground. Let's go." With that said, he turned to leave. Swash! A breeze blew. Su Zimo had already vanished on the spot. In the blink of an eye, he appeared before the 5 Elements Sect cultivator. "Who gave you permission to leave?" Su Zimo said indifferently. Without waiting for the person to react, he reached out and grabbed the person's throat with a flick of his wrist. Crackle! All his bones were dislocated. Suddenly, Su Zimo reached out and slapped the person's cheek. Piak! There was a crisp sound. Instantly, the person's cheeks turned red and swollen. Piak! Another sound. For the cultivator, it was a great humiliation to be slapped while lifted in the air right in front of everybody. "You deserve that beating for your nasty tongue." Ru Xian spat at that person and cursed fiercely. Chapter 930. Terrifying Di-Inge. Chapter 930. Terrifying Di-In. Piak, piak, piak. Lifting the cultivator of 5 Elements Sect, Su Zimo slapped him repeatedly. He did not stop until the person's face was completely swollen. Ji Chengtian watched from the side and felt cathartic. Earlier on, he could only endure the ridicule from the cultivators around him. To think that this random passerby would help him vent his anger. Su Zimo tossed his arm casually. The person laid limply on the ground with his mouth filled with blood. All his teeth were shattered and he could not say a single word, merely grunting deeply. A 5 Elements Sect cultivator said deeply with eyes that spewed fire, "Fellow Taoist, leave your name if you have the guts. 5 Elements Sect will remember today's humiliation and repay you in the future." Su Zimo had an indifferent expression. Before he could say anything, a cultivator in the crowd exclaimed, "It's him. I've seen him before." "Who is he?" A month ago, he was the nascent soul who crippled Cheng Pang in Wind Cloud City, defeated Jian Wuzong and took away the startling Dermic sword. "There's no way I'm wrong." Ah! The crowd fell into an uproar. The battle a month ago had long spread through 1,000 Crane Sect and was the focus of discussions among many cultivators. Everyone knew that the paragons of Heavenly Dipper Sect and Sword Sect would definitely regain their dignity at the 1,000 Crane Tea Party, and there would definitely be a huge battle. I heard that not only did he defeat Jian Wuzong, the latter did not even have a chance to withdraw his sword against this man's suppression. Who is that? Why haven't I heard of him before? I think he's called Mo Ling. Su Zimo did not hide the name Mo Ling. It was not difficult to obtain this information within a month. Most cultivators were at a loss when they heard that name. Only Ji Chengtian's heart skipped a beat. Back in Ethereal Peak, his junior brother and close friend, Su Zimo, assumed the name Mo Ling and stayed in the capital of Great Zhou as a weapon refinement master. Everyone had to address him as Mr. Mo. Later on, at the sect competition, Missouri Ling shocked everyone and became famous throughout the entire Great Zhou dynasty. Of course, there were countless cultivators called Mo Ling in the world. Furthermore, apart from his green robes, there was no resemblance between this Mo Ling and Su Zimo. Ji Chengtian did not manage to associate Mo Ling with Su Zimo. Only, now that he heard the name Mo Ling, he recalled some memories. Let's go. He won't be smug for long. That's right. Once Hang Qiuyu of Sword Sect and perfected Lord Pang Lan of Heavenly Dipper Sect arrive, he'll be in for it. Everyone from 5 Element Sect said a few more vicious words before turning to leave. When the surrounding cultivators saw that there was no commotion, they dispersed as well. Arriving before Su Zimo, Ji Qingtian bowed slightly and smiled. I'm Ji Qingtian of Elixir Yang Sect. Thank you for your help, fellow Taoist. I'm Mo Ling. Su Zimo cupped his fists as well and looked at Ji Qingtian with a fake smile. For some reason, Ji Qingtian felt that the way Mo Ling looked at him was a little strange and did not seem distant. Hello, my name is Ru Xian. Ru Xian closed in as well and waved at Ji Qingtian. This is my little granduncle master. Impressive, right? Yes. Ji Qingtian nodded sincerely. Fellow Taoist, I'm impressed by your strength. Pausing for a moment, Ji Qingtian continued, however, I heard that the combat strength of Hang Qiuyu and perfected Lord Panglan is not to be underestimated as well. Fellow Taoist, you have to be careful and not look down on them. Nan Gongling and the other two revealed worried expressions when they heard the names of the two experts. The three of you can head back first. Turning around, Su Zimo instructed Nan Gongling and the other two. Go settle down at your residence and don't run around. There are many people watching 100 Refinement Sect right now, and it's not safe here. Little Granduncle Master, what about you? Ru Xian asked. I have something else to do. You guys can head back first. Su Zimo's tone was calm but unquestionable. Nan Gongling and the other two exchanged glances before bowing and leaving, speeding towards their residence. Since you have something important to attend to, I won't disturb you any further. Ji Qingtian cupped his fists. Fellow Taoist, if you need any help in the future, feel free to look for me at Elixir Yang Sect. I'll definitely do my best. Su Zimo smiled. What a coincidence. I have something for you right now. Ha! Ji Qingtian replied hurriedly. Please speak, fellow Taoist. Su Zimo looked around. Sweeping his gaze, Ji Qingtian saw that there were still many cultivators lingering around, watching them. He understood immediately and said, Fellow Taoist, if you don't mind, please come to my residence for a chat. All right. Su Zimo agreed without hesitation. Elixir Yang Sect's residence was not too far away, and the two of them arrived in no time. Ji Qingtian poured a cup of hot tea for Su Zimo before saying, Fellow Taoist, there's no one else here. Please speak. Brother Ji, how have you been? The muscles on Su Zimo's face twitched and his bones transformed. In the blink of an eye, he reverted to his refined, handsome appearance and smiled at Ji Qingtian. Ji Qingtian's eyes widened. At first, his eyes were filled with shock and then ecstasy. Ah! He exclaimed and took a step forward, grabbing Su Zimo's wrist excitedly. Su Zimo shook his head gently and made a shushing sound. Ji Qingtian took a deep breath hurriedly to compose himself and whispered, Zimo, it's you. It's great seeing that you are fine. Even though Ji Qingtian's voice was suppressed, he could not conceal his joy and his voice trembled slightly in his agitation. Su Zimo patted Ji Qingtian on the shoulder. I'm fine. Sorry for worrying everyone. Although we know that you shouldn't be in any danger given your capabilities, we were still worried because you went missing for 100 years. Ji Qingtian thumped Su Zimo on the chest and smiled. Now that I see that you're fine, I can finally let go of this burden. I heard about everything that happened to you guys. Killing intent flashed through Su Zimo's eyes. Don't worry, Brother Ji. I'll definitely take Di Yin's life. When he heard Su Zimo mention that, Ji Qingtian seemed to recall the hunt with lingering fear. His face turned pale as he shook his head. 80 years ago, when Di Yin reappeared and came looking for us, he was already at the perfected nascent soul realm. Di Yin is way too strong. Nobody can imagine how strong he is without fighting him personally. I was completely helpless against him. At that time, I was saved by Elixir Yang Sect's experts who were thankfully nearby. I only recovered after recuperating for more than 10 years. After pondering for a moment, Ji Qingtian continued, Don't worry, little fatty is fine as well. He was severely injured by Di Yin and entered a tomb by mistake which turned out to be a blessing in disguise. Suddenly, Su Zimo frowned and murmured, Di Yin was at the perfected nascent soul realm when he reappeared 80 years ago. This means that he merely took 20 years to advance to the nascent soul realm before reaching the perfected state? Ji Qingtian nodded with a bitter smile. That man has terrifying fortune and shocking talent. Coupled with the inheritance of the human emperor, he's like a tiger with wings. He's truly a monster incarnate that hasn't appeared in 10,000 years. Chapter 931. The Tea Party Begins. Chapter 931. The Tea Party Begins. In a short 20 years, Di'in had advanced from early stage to perfected nascent soul realm. This sort of cultivation speed was absolutely unimaginable. Nobody knew what sort of opportunities he had obtained. Even Su Zimo had not expected that Di'in would be able to rise against the tides and advance to such an extent after being suppressed by him once. Suddenly, Su Zimo thought of something and frowned. If Di'in was already at perfected nascent soul realm 80 years ago, what's his cultivation now? Void Reversion Realm. Ji Qingtian replied. I heard that he broke through to the Void Reversion Realm 50 years ago. I'm not sure what stage he's at now.
Good, you have not disappointed me indeed.
When Su Zimo heard that Di'in was so strong, he did not feel any fear at all.
Instead, his battle intent surged and his eyes shone with a torrential aura.
He had killed Void Reversion experts before. Gazing at his old friend, Ji Qingtian was filled with emotions. 100 years had passed. That strongest monster incarnate in history who was invincible among his peers and suppressed the foreign races had not changed. He was equally aggressive. He was equally domineering. He possessed the same arrogance. Only Su Zimo would dare to say something like that. However, I reckon that Di'in won't be appearing at this 1,000 Crane Tea Party. Ji Qingtian analyzed. Firstly, the 1,000 Crane Tea Party is a gathering of nascent soul paragons. He's already a void reversion and won't be interested. Secondly, Chaos Essence Sect will be able to settle everything for this tea party with Yi Tiancheng's presence alone. He's a monster incarnate not weaker than Di'in. Thirdly, Di'in doesn't know about your return either. Su Zimo's gaze was deep as he said faintly, It's all right, he'll definitely appear. Ji Qingtian's heart skipped a beat. Sensing the killing intent in Su Zimo's tone, he asked softly, You're not going to hide your identity anymore. We'll let nature take its course. Su Zimo said, Many major factions will be gathered at this 1,000 Crane Tea Party that is hosted by a Dharma characteristic. There's a high chance I won't be able to hide my identity even if I want to. After sending Dao Lord Extreme Fire safely back to 100 Refinement Sect, it was no longer important whether Su Zimo hid his identity or not. Furthermore, he was already prepared for the worst. That his identity would be exposed. Pondering for a moment, Su Zimo asked again, Have you heard about the rumors of Lang Rou's marriage with Yi Tiancheng? Ji Qingtian nodded. Initially, I wasn't sure if Lang Rou was forced into this marriage. However, I'm almost certain now that Lang Rou has no choice.
Earlier on, when he went to meet her, the two cultivators guarding the place did not even enter to report about it. It was clear that they had received some instructions.
Otherwise, given his relationship with Lang Rou, she wouldn't have refused to meet him even once. Ji Qingtian thought for a moment and continued. Zimo, you don't have to worry too much. There's still a competition of talismans at the 1,000 Crane Tea Party. Lang Rou will definitely appear then. Since Di'in thought of such a despicable method to force me to appear, I'll do as he wishes. A shuddering killing intent emanated from Su Zimo as he said slowly. It's been 100 years. I want to see how much the paragons of Tianhuang mainland have grown. A moment later, Su Zimo retracted his killing intent and asked, By the way, where's Xiaoning? Has she been well all these years? Is she here for the 1,000 Crane Tea Party? Ji Qingtian had a strange expression at the mention of Xiaoning. He shook his head. Ever since Xiaoning and Night Spirit headed to the North region 100 years ago, they haven't returned to the Sect. However, every once in a while, Xiaoning would send a message to the Sect saying that she's safe. Su Zimo furrowed his brows slightly. He missed Xiaoning the most after 100 years. To think that Xiaoning had not returned for 100 years. Thankfully, with Night Spirit by her side, she should not be in any danger. However, he did not know when they would meet again if he missed this opportunity. The two of them chatted for a long time after not seeing each other for 100 years. It was only until daybreak that Su Zimo reverted to his rough appearance and returned to his residence in 100 Refinement Sect. For the next 3 days, Su Zimo did not leave his residence. Almost all the major sects, factions, upper sects and aristocratic families of the Middle Continent have arrived. The 6 immortal sects of the Middle Continent, Heavenly Dipper Sect, Snowdrift Valley, Chaos Essence Sect, Zephyr Thunder Palace, Sword Sect and Soaring Feather Sect, were all present. Perfected Lord Panglan and Hang Qiuyu caused quite a stir when they arrived. Many cultivators headed over to take a look at their glorious presence. When Chaos Essence Sect's Yi Tiancheng arrived, an even greater commotion was caused. It was not only Thousand Cranes Sect. Almost all the cultivators of the major sects rushed over. It was said in the cultivation world that although Yi Tiancheng had just entered the nascent soul realm and was only at early stage nascent soul, his combat strength was so strong that he could be conferred the title of number 1 perfected lord. That was a great title. It would be unprecedented for him to be conferred as the number 1 perfected lord at early stage nascent soul realm. Of course, when this title was first spread, there were naturally many nascent soul paragons who were indignant and challenged Yi Tiancheng, but they were all killed one after another. Since then, the voices of opposition gradually disappeared. When Yi Tiancheng arrived, even Nan Gongling and the other 2 could not help but run out to take a look. Only Su Zimo remained in his residence with his eyes closed, seemingly uninterested in the so-called paragons. Among the Buddhist monasteries, the 3 major monasteries of Hollow, Formless and Wisdom monasteries had already arrived at Thousand Cranes Sect. Ming Zhan's Dapamkara temple was located in the southern region and it was far away, so they did not partake in this. There were dozens of upper sects in the Middle Continent and they were all present. Peach Blossom Peak, Tyrant Emperor Mountain, 5 Element Sect, Heavenly Sea God Sect, Sun Moon Residence, Flying Star Sect, Heavenly Net Dock, Refuge Pavilion, Black Frost Sect, Unparalleled Sword Sect, Great Change Academy, Traceless Temple, Black Yang Temple, Azure Cloud Monastery, 7 Luminaries Hall. On this day, the Thousand Crane Tea Party officially began. Many sects and cultivators set off one after another. Under the lead of the Thousand Cranes Sect cultivators, they headed towards the Mystic Courtyard where the Mystic Tea Tree was located. On the way, Dao Being Yuding explained, I heard that there are a total of 527 cups of Mystic Tea and only 5 cups of Supreme Grade Mystic Tea. If one was close enough, they would be able to clearly see that at the top of the Mystic Tea Tree, there were 5 sparkling green tea leaves. Each tea leaf could only be brewed into a cup of Supreme Grade Mystic Tea. The Thousand Crane Tea Party is split into 2 parts. Dao Being Yuding continued. The first part is the fight between the 4 unorthodox groups. They are the battle of formations, talismans, elixir and weapon refinement. The hearts of the 100 Refinement Sect cultivators skipped a beat. The glory of the sect hinged on the weapon refinement competition in the first part. Dao Being Yuding said, if nothing goes wrong, this weapon refinement competition should be ranked at the back of the 4. Junior Sister Lu, try your best to relax and perform well. I'll do my best. Lu Hanyan nodded. Dao Being Yuding continued, the first part can be considered as an advantage to take care of our 4 unorthodox groups where the final victors of each segment will be able to drink a cup of Supreme Grade Mystic Tea. This is great for us. Ru Xian clapped her hands. Sister Hanyan, if you win, you can even have a cup of Supreme Grade Mystic Tea. Lu Hanyan merely smiled without saying anything. She knew very well that the chances of her winning this weapon refinement battle were less than 30%. The best-case scenario would be a tie. Chapter 932, Yi Tiancheng. Chapter 932, Yi Tiancheng. Dao Being Yuding said, there's only a cup of Supreme Grade Mystic Tea left. That's the second part, the fight between paragons. The final cup of Supreme Grade Mystic Tea is extremely precious and only the number 1 perfected lord of the Middle Continent will be qualified to drink it. Nan Gongling lamented, I wonder if it's Yi Tiancheng or perfected Lord Panglan. I feel that only those top 2 of the phenomenon ranking are qualified to compete for the 5th cup of Supreme Grade Mystic Tea. I'll bet on Yi Tiancheng. Ru Xian said before turning to ask, Little Granduncle Master, what do you think? Su Zimo replied indifferently, I'm betting that neither of them will get to drink it.
Ah, why?
Ru Xian asked curiously.
Su Zimo smiled and said in a seemingly casual manner, because I won't allow it. Little granduncle master, you're bragging again.
When she heard that, Ru Xian giggled as well and did not take it to heart. Right then, everyone from 100 Refinement Sect entered the courtyard with the 1,000 Crane Sect cultivators. The moment they stepped into the mystic courtyard, everyone from 100 Refinement Sect felt a momentary silence in the initially noisy courtyard.
Most of the sects and factions in the courtyard were already in their seats.
The gathering of nascent soul paragons was a spectacular sight. This was a rare cultivation event after the phenomenon ranking. At that moment, when 100 Refinement Sect entered the mystic courtyard, everyone glared at them with burning gazes. 100 Refinement Sect is here. I heard that a ruthless character from 100 Refinement Sect defeated a few paragons consecutively and has already angered many faction. What's the use of being ruthless? Which of the paragons here isn't ruthless? Fufu, 100 Refinement Sect is already nearing its end and is about to be removed from the 4 unorthodox groups.
100 Refinement Sect was already in a precarious situation. They were already at the cusp of the storm the moment they appeared.
The 1,000 Crane Tea Party was held once every 1,000 years. Most of the 100 Refinement Sect cultivators had never experienced such a situation before. Coupled with the fact that their sect was in a precarious situation, many of them felt uneasy. Even Nangong Ling and the other two became nervous. Right now, the only person who could remain calm was Su Zimo. In that short period of time, he could already feel many sharp gazes lingering on him with cold killing intent. Su Zimo was indifferent and could not be bothered. Fellow Taoists of 100 Refinement Sect, this way please. 1,000 Crane Sect cultivator pointed to an area not far away and said in a deep voice. Everyone from 100 Refinement Sect looked over and their expressions darkened. That was where the 4 unorthodox groups were located. However, apart from Ancient Array Sect, Elixir Yang Sect and 1,000 Crane Sect, there was another group of cultivators standing there. The robes of those cultivators were dark and there was a ball of hellfire tattooed on their sleeves. Hellfire Hall. The tea party had yet to truly begin and the seats occupied by 100 Refinement Sect and Hellfire Hall were already at odds with one another. It was extremely intense. This was originally a region where the 4 unorthodox groups were stationed. Now that 5 sects had appeared, their intentions were self-evident. The loser of this weapon refinement battle would lose their rights to stay in this region. Dao Being Yu Ding had a grim expression and did not say anything. Since Hellfire Hall was standing here, it was clear that they had obtained 1,000 Crane Sect's approval. Even if they protested, nothing would happen. Hellfire Hall's foundation was already established. Their Void Reversion leader is Dao Lord Qian Feng. Behind him is Ming Han, the person who's fighting senior sister Lu. Ru Xian whispered. Su Zimo swept his gaze and noticed Ming Han immediately. The cultivator was very young and exuded a cold aura. Raising his chin slightly, he looked extremely arrogant. Before long, everyone from 100 Refinement Sect assumed their seats. That should be perfected Lord Pang Lon. Nangong Ling looked in the direction of Heavenly Dipper Sect and saw a nascent soul standing at the front. His long hair fluttered and his eyes were long and narrow. At that moment, he was looking at Su Zimo with a faint smile. That's Hang Qiuyu. Nangong Ling looked to the other side. Su Zimo looked over. He had not seen Hang Qiuyu for 100 years and the latter had changed quite a bit. He was now at peak late-stage nascent soul realm. Although he was sharp, his aura was restrained. It was clear that he was in an advanced realm of the Sword Dao compared to Jian Wuzong. Zephyr Thunder Palace, Snowdrift Valley. Nangong Ling and Ru Xian introduced the paragons of the Immortal and Buddhist sects to Su Zimo. Su Zimo was distracted and merely nodded occasionally as a response. Suddenly, a commotion broke out in the crowd and many cultivators shouted with shining eyes. Not far away in the skies, roughly 1,000 Chaos Essence Sect cultivators sped over in a mighty manner. The most eye-catching thing was the 9 WYRMS at the front. The 9 WYRMS rode side by side, soaring through the clouds with rumbling auras. Together, they dragged a gigantic throne over slowly. The WYRM was a pure-blooded ferocious beast.
It was already a great opportunity for ordinary cultivators if they could obtain one.
But now, the 9 WYRMS were controlled by a single person. Look! Yi Tiancheng is here. How spectacular! As expected of the #1 perfected lord.
Seated on the throne was an extremely handsome cultivator. He was young and his eyes were closed, as though he was taking a nap. He exuded an invincible aura that swept through everything. Surrounding the throne were 9 extremely beautiful women.
Some of them were playing flutes, some were tossing flower petals, and while others fanned gently with feather fans. The most frightening thing was that the 9 women followers were also at nascent soul realm. In fact, there was even a woman at perfected nascent soul realm.
Even at his cultivation realm, she was still willing to be the servant of the cultivator on the throne. That was proof of how terrifying he was.
Chaos Essence Sect and the top of the phenomenon ranking, Yi Tiancheng. His appearance attracted countless gazes. Indeed, no one could match such a grand display.
Nan Gongling could not help but sigh emotionally and said in admiration, as expected of the #1 perfected lord.
No one can match up to his grandeur. When Yi Tiancheng appeared, all the cultivators present, including void reversions, were shocked. Even perfected Lord Panglan, who was at the top of the phenomenon ranking 400 years ago and was said to be halfway to void reversion realm, had a grim expression. Su Zimo was the only one who did not blink the entire time. Lu Hanyan and Ru Xian were even more surprised when they saw that. It was truly hard for them to imagine that there were still cultivators who could remain calm in the face of Yi Tiancheng's aura. As expected of one of the great 2 paragons of Chaos Essence Sect, their sect's rise is inevitable. No wonder Thousand Crane Sect's sect master worked so hard to facilitate this marriage alliance. Yi Tiancheng's potential is limitless and he has a high chance of becoming an emperor in the future. In the blink of an eye, everyone from Chaos Essence Sect arrived in the courtyard. With a ferocious gaze, the 9 WRMS surveyed their surroundings and let out a series of growls. Many cultivators retreated with fearful expressions. Be quiet. Yi Tiancheng opened his eyes and said slowly. When the 9 WRMs heard that, they quietened down instantly and sprawled on the ground obediently like 9 little snakes. It's only been a few days since we last met. Brother Yi, you look way more amazing than before. Right then, a Hellfire Hall cultivator walked towards Yi Tiancheng and cupped his fists with a smile. Nan Gongling frowned. It's Ming Han. How does he know Yi Tiancheng? Furthermore, it seems like their relationship isn't bad, Ru Xian murmured with a worried expression. If Ming Han was on good terms with Yi Tiancheng, did that mean that Chaos Essence Sect would stand on the side of Hellfire Hall for this Thousand Crane Tea Party? Furthermore, they would intercede for Hellfire Hall. Chapter 933, Ruthless. Chapter 933, Ruthless. Brother Ming Han, how have you been? Yi Tiancheng stood on his throne without getting up.
Or rather, none of the cultivators in the mystic courtyard were worthy of him standing up to welcome them.
Yi Tiancheng waved his hand gently and the 9 WRMS in front of him understood. They opened up a path and allowed Ming Han to enter. Yi Tiancheng sat on his throne high and mighty. Ming Han stood below. Even so, that was enough to make many cultivators envious.
To be able to have a friendly relationship with Yi Tiancheng and converse with him at such a close distance was already a great honor for many cultivators.
The atmosphere on the side of 100 Refinement Sect was a little depressing. The closer Ming Han and Yi Tiancheng were, the worse the situation for 100 Refinement Sect was. A moment later, Dao Bing Yuding turned around and consoled Lu Hanyan. Junior sister Lu, you don't have to worry. As long as you win the weapon refinement competition and salvage the reputation of the sect with pride, it wouldn't matter even if Ming Han is acquainted with Yi Tiancheng. Yes. Lu Hanyan nodded and pursed her lips in silence. Su Zimo sighed internally. Although Dao Bing Yuding's intention was to console her, his words clearly gave Lu Hanyan even more pressure. Right then, the doors to the inner courtyard of Mystic Courtyard opened and a group of beautiful female cultivators walked out. Their figures and appearances varied, but they were all unique in their own rights. The woman at the front wore a white dress that fluttered in the wind. She was extremely beautiful and had an indifferent expression.
There was no human aura around her, and she looked like a fairy that had descended onto the mortal realm.
However, her gaze was cold and she resembled an iceberg, causing many cultivators to shrink back.
Wow! Fairy Lang Ro has appeared.
Truly peerless and devastatingly beautiful. The crowd gasped. Although her entrance was not grand, the commotion caused by Lang Ro's appearance was no less than Tiancheng. Raising his head, Su Zimo looked at the woman who was walking over slowly with a warm gaze and a sincere smile. After not seeing her for 100 years, Lang Ro had grown increasingly cold and aloof. Su Zimo was delighted to see that his old friend was fine. Although Lang Ro was in a predicament right now, he was already here and naturally wouldn't let his old friend suffer any grievances. Su Zimo looked at Lang Ro, lost in his thoughts. At the side, Ru Xian was displeased.
Humph!
Pouting her lips, Ru Xian glared at Su Zimo and snapped. I thought that you would be able to keep your cool. But you're the same when you see a beauty. Hey, be careful. Your saliva will flow out soon. Lu Hanyan frowned slightly, feeling surprised. In her impression, Su Zimo was not that sort of a playboy. She was a beauty herself. Back when they first met, Su Zimo had never revealed such a gaze or smile. Furthermore, if even Tiancheng could not move Su Zimo, how could this fairy Lang Ro possess such charm? Lu Hanyan did not understand. Furthermore, she noticed that Su Zimo was not looking at fairy Lang Ro with infatuated or lustful eyes. Su Zimo looked at fairy Lang Ro with a clear and gentle gaze. Lu Hanyan glanced sideways at Tiancheng who was not far away. At that moment, Tiancheng was also looking at Lang Ro. However, Tiancheng's gaze was condescending and filled with dominance, causing Lu Hanyan to feel uncomfortable.
Lang Ro, I'm here.
Tiancheng stood up slowly and looked at Lang Ro with a smile.
He had a haughty expression as though he was waiting for Lang Ro to make a reply.
Unfortunately, Lang Ro did not even look at him. The situation was awkward. The clamor of the crowd around them died down as well. A cold glint flashed through Tiancheng's eyes before he chuckled with a carefree expression. Seemingly unconcerned, he sat back down.
Foo-foo.
Out of nowhere, a cultivator could not help but laugh. Tiancheng's expression turned cold. A nascent soul maidservant who was initially standing beside him leaped into the crowd.
Her sleeves fluttered and she thrust forward with a dagger that possessed a cold glint.
The cultivator was flustered and caught off guard. He had not expected anybody to dare attack someone else in front of so many void reversions of Thousand Crane Sect. Furthermore, although the nascent soul realm woman looked weak, her attack was extremely decisive and ruthless. She did not hold back at all when she stabbed the man's glabella. Cultivators who could attend the tea party were no ordinary people.
Clang! Slapping his storage bag, the man drew out a long saber and slashed viciously at the incoming dagger.
Clang! The saber and dagger collided. The man shuddered. Although the nascent soul realm woman was skinny, the power she released was extremely shocking. He could not hold his saber properly. All of a sudden, a cold glint flashed through the nascent soul realm woman's eyes as she changed her moves extremely quickly. With a twist of her wrist, the dagger's edge slid down along the saber and sliced off 4 of the cultivator's fingers.
Ah!
With a tragic cry, the person staggered in retreat with a bloodied palm. Unexpectedly, the nascent soul realm woman did not hold back at all.
With a cold expression, she closed in and threw her dagger.
The dagger circled around the person's neck nimbly before returning to her hand. Poof! A gigantic head fell. In his shock, the nascent soul's essence spirit left his body. However, the essence spirit did not manage to escape far before it convulsed in the cold wind. Its light dimmed rapidly and dissipated in the void, dying on the spot. The essence spirits of nascent souls were way too weak and would die before long without their bodies. The huge mystic courtyard was so silent that one could hear a pin drop. Nobody expected the nascent soul to be killed on the spot because of a single laugh. Furthermore, Tiancheng was not the one who attacked personally. Instead, his maidservant sliced off the person's head with 2 slashes. Normally, cultivators were forbidden from fighting to the death within Thousand Crane Sect. Even if it was a fight between the paragons of the tea party, they would only stop when things were right and no killing was allowed. Who would have thought that Yi Tiancheng would be so domineering? Before the 1,000-crane tea party even began, it was already stained with blood. The courtyard was filled with a murderous aura and all the cultivators were silent. Yi Tiancheng finally opened his mouth and said lazily, Yi Qi merely wanted to teach him a lesson and had already held back. He was the one who courted death and chose to release his essence spirit. She can't be blamed for that. Yi Qi was the name of that nascent soul maidservant. To be precise, the 9 maidservants had no names but numbers, from Yi Yi to Yi Jiao. When the void reversions of 1,000-crane sect heard that explanation, they frowned but did not say anything, acknowledging his reason in silence. The hearts of the cultivators turned cold. Yi Tiancheng's words were completely unreasonable. By beheading a nascent soul's head, Yi Qi destroyed the nascent soul's physical body. Once his head was severed, his blood qi would dry up before long. Even if that person's essence spirit did not leave his body and resided within his withered head, it would not be able to hold out for long and would still die. Yi Qi's attack was no different from killing that person. Everyone understood that logic. However, the void reversions of 1,000-crane sect acknowledged it. This incident was also proof of 1,000-crane sect's attitude towards Yi Tiancheng. Tisk. TSK. TSK. The number 1 of the phenomenon ranking sure is impressive. Right then, another mocking laughter sounded from the courtyard. Chapter 934. Reunion of 5. Chapter 934. Reunion of 5. The crowd was shocked. Earlier on, someone was killed on the spot by Yi Tiancheng's maidservant just because he laughed. Even 1,000-crane sect did not step in and acknowledge the act in silence. To think that someone would dare to speak at this moment. Furthermore, this time round, he was openly mocking Yi Tiancheng and challenging the latter's authority. Many cultivators realized that someone was about to die. When he heard that voice, Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat and he could not help but smile. To think that he would be here as well. Ji Qingtian looked around in shock and joy. Initially, Lang Rou had a cold expression. However, when she heard that voice, her expression changed slightly and her cold eyes flashed with warmth. Yi Tiancheng narrowed his eyes and surveyed his surroundings. Initially, the 9 maidservants beside him frowned and scanned the crowd. However, they were hesitant and did not move for a long time. When that voice sounded earlier on, it was erratic and difficult to determine its direction. None of them could be certain where it came from. Fufu, what are you squinting at? Look at that silly look of yours. The mocking voice sounded once again. This time round, the provocation was even stronger and it was a personal attack. Even an ordinary person would not be able to take such a provocation, not to mention Yi Tiancheng, who was the number 1 of the phenomenon ranking and lauded as the number 1 perfected lord. Swoosh! Yi Tiancheng stood up with a murderous aura. His glabella shone and he released his massive spirit consciousness, enveloping the entire courtyard. A moment later, he did not move still and had a grim expression. He did not discover anything. After his spirit consciousness descended, the voice seemed to have vanished into thin air and was hidden as well. Even the void reversions present could not find the person who spoke, let alone Yi Tiancheng. Yi Tiancheng took a deep breath and retracted his spirit consciousness slowly with a dark gaze before returning to his seat. Aya, that scared me. Yi Tiancheng had just retracted his spirit consciousness and his but had yet to even touch his seat when the mocking voice sounded once more. It's not that I want to say this, but Chaos Essence Sect is really arrogant. You can't take it when someone laughs. Now that you can't find me, are you going to explode from anger? Su Zimo snickered internally. To think that little fatty would be even more mischievous after 100 years. Furthermore, it had to be said that little fatty's concealment technique was extremely brilliant. Even Su Zimo could only vaguely determine little fatty's location with his 6 powerful senses. Little fatty kept moving through the crowd. However, his body seemed to be covered with a treasure that concealed his aura that no one could discover. Furthermore, he moved very slowly and carefully. Who is this coward that is hiding in the darkness? Yi Tiancheng's expression darkened as he said slowly, "Show yourself if you dare." "No, I don't dare to, I'm timid," little fatty replied, You kill people at the drop of a hat and Thousand Crane Sect doesn't care. Who wouldn't be afraid? Not only was he mocking Yi Tiancheng for killing the innocent, he was also mocking Thousand Crane Sect. Many void reversions of Thousand Crane Sect turned scarlet. Yi Tiancheng closed his eyes and suddenly shut his mouth, as though he had given up on searching. After a while, Little Fatty asked again, "What are you doing there? Are you asleep?" All of a sudden, Yi Tiancheng opened his eyes and killing intent burst forth. In a flash he leaped into the crowd and hollered coldly, "Get the hell out!" The cultivators dispersed in shock. There was only a black-robed figure standing on the spot, seemingly scared out of his wits. Boom! Yi Tiancheng's fist landed heavily on that person's chest. The person's clothes were torn and he was sent flying. His chest was pierced but strangely, no blood flowed out. Bang! The person fell to the ground and rolled a few times before stopping. Everyone focused their attention. It was not a person at all, but a puppet made from superior-grade black iron. The puppet was sprawled on the ground with its back facing everyone. There were a few words written on its back. "The one who hit me is an idiot." Ha 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 ha. This time round, the cultivators could no longer hold it in and burst into laughter. Su Zimo laughed as well. It turned out that Little Fatty was not the only one. There was also the foolish Xueqi who joined Puppet Sect. They were all here. When she saw that, Lang Rou pursed her lips emotionally. When her old friends heard about her marriage with Yi Tiancheng, they knew that it might be a trap but they still rushed over without hesitation. It was the case for Ji Chengtian. It was the same for Little Fatty and Xueqi. Lang Rou was not a sentimental person to begin with. However, at that moment, she felt her nose sting and her eyes reddened. Yi Tiancheng's expression turned extremely grim. In fact, he even had a thought to kill all the cultivators laughing at that instant. However, he knew that it was unrealistic. Even though he was the top of the phenomenon ranking and #1 perfected lord, even he could not do that. Stop fooling around. Right then, a soft shout sounded from afar. 3 graceful figures appeared in the air with powerful auras and an unrestrained might. 3 Dharma-characteristic Tao Lords. Although the 3 female cultivators looked like they were in their middle ages, they were still beautiful and exuded a mature aura that no young girl could possess. The female cultivator in the lead was the sect master of Thousand Crane Sect, Tao Lord Lan Yu. The 2 beside her were elders of Thousand Crane Sect. Tao Lord Lan Yu swept her gaze across the crowd and said indifferently, "If the 2 of you are here for the Thousand Crane Tea Party, Thousand Crane Sect will naturally welcome you. However, if you are here to cause trouble, don't blame me for chasing you out." No matter how brilliant Little Fatty and Xueqi were, they could not hide from the spirit consciousness detection of a Dharma-characteristic Tao Lord. Little Fatty and Xueqi sneaked over to the side of Thousand Crane Sect before revealing themselves. The 2 of them made faces at Yi Tiancheng. At that moment, Thousand Crane Sect's sect master was present. No matter how strong Yi Tiancheng was, he would not dare to start a massacre right in front of Thousand Crane Sect's sect master. Pretty sister sect master, please don't chase us out." Little Fatty greeted Tao Lord Lan Yu with a grin. Although Tao Lord Lan Yu was expressionless, she was delighted when he addressed her as pretty sister sect master. Although she looked like she was only middle-aged, she had already lived for thousands of years. How could she not be happy when she heard a 100-year-old child call her a pretty sister? Little Fatty said, "Pretty sister sect master, Yi Tiancheng even dared to kill someone in your territory. If you chase us out, he'll definitely kill us. A smiling person will not be the target of attacks. Furthermore, Little Fatty had a sweet tongue." Moreover, Little Fatty and Xueqi were also the successors of Tomb Sect and Puppet Sect. Perfected Lord Lan Yu naturally had her reservations. She said, "It's good that you guys know the situation. Given your reputations, you're qualified to drink a cup of mystical tea." Pausing for a moment, Perfected Lord Lan Yu looked at the 2 of them warningly and said word by word, "Remember, don't cause trouble for me." Xueqi was still in a foolish daze and stood squarely in silence. Little Fatty chuckled and let it pass. With a smile, Lang Rou beckoned to the 2 of them. "Come over here. Call Brother G." "Haha, that's what I was waiting for." Ji Chengtian burst into laughter and walked out of the crowd. 100 years later, the four of them finally reunited. To be precise, it was the five of them. Su Zimo sat on the side of 100 Refinement Sect and did not make a move, nor did he remind Lang Rou and the others. Spirit consciousness transmissions would cause spirit consciousness fluctuations. At that moment, if he were to send a voice transmission, it would definitely attract the attention of others, and there was no need for that. Chapter 935. I'm not willing. Chapter 935. I'm not willing. So, it's you two. Yi Tiancheng had already returned to his throne and said with a sinister smile. Good, very good. Let's see how long you two can hide in Thousand Crane Sect. Pretty sister Sect master, look. Little Fatty complained immediately. How dare he raise his voice in front of you? He's really looking down on you. When he heard that, Yi Tiancheng was so angry that he wanted to rush into the crowd and tear Little Fatty into pieces. That's enough. Dao Lord Lan Yu waved it off and ignored Little Fatty, declaring loudly, Everyone, welcome to Thousand Crane Sect as guests for this tea party. The tea party is mainly divided into two parts. I'm sure everyone already knows about it, so I won't elaborate any further. First, it will be a formation battle. Second, the competition for elixir refinement. Third, the competition for talismans. Fourth, the most important thing for this tea session is the weapon refinement fight between 100 Refinement Sect and Hellfire Palace. It was as everyone had expected. Thousand Crane Sect had arranged for the highly anticipated weapon refinement battle to be held at the end. Su Zimo glanced at Ming Han of Hellfire Hall and Lu Hanyen before shaking his head slightly. They were clearly in different mental states. Ming Han and Yi Tiancheng chatted merrily with relaxed expressions. Lu Hanyen, on the other hand, lowered her head slightly and clenched her fists in silence. Su Zimo could tell that Lu Hanyen was under immense pressure and was starting to get nervous. However, there was nothing he could do about it. He was a weapon refinement master and could refine spirit weapons. But right now, both parties were competing on the refinement of dermic weapons. The difference between spirit and dermic weapons was just a single word, but the difference between them was worlds apart. Although Dao Lord Extreme Fire had already imparted many techniques and secret skills of weapon refinement to Su Zimo, he had never tried them. There was no such thing as an epiphany for weapon refinement. It required countless attempts and tempering. He had to put in a lot of effort in that regard. It had only been 3 months since Dao Lord Extreme Fire imparted these things to him, and he had no time to practice them. The tea party had already begun. The first match was a battle of formations. The rules were simple. Ancient Array Sect would send out a cultivator. As for the other sects and factions, including the Immortal and Buddhist sects, upper sects, aristocratic families and even itinerant cultivators, as long as there was an formation master who could defeat this cultivator from the Ancient Array Sect, it would be considered as a victory. If no one could defeat the Ancient Array Sect cultivator, it would be Ancient Array Sect's victory. Although the rules were simple, it revealed the sect's confidence and foundation as one of the 4 unorthodox groups. Disciples of the Ancient Formation Sect would be able to take on all challenges pertaining to formations. The final victor would be personally conferred the title of Great Master by Dao Lord Lan Yu. For example, the final victor of the formation battle would become a Great Formation Master. The final victor of the Elixir Refinement competition would become a Great Elixir Refinement Master. A total of 4 Great Masters would be decided for the 4 battles. All of them would be eligible for a cup of Supreme Grade Mystic Tea. Array formations were deduced from a gigantic sand table and could be set up once a cultivator's spirit consciousness entered. Su Zimo had studied formations before as well. In fact, he had not abandoned it all these years. That was because for every deeper level of the Illumination Sword formation, not only would the number of flying swords required increase, he would also have to comprehend the profoundness of the formation. Only, Su Zimo's Illumination Sword formation was stuck at level 3 and could no longer advance. However, he had long comprehended the level 4 formation. It was just that he did not have any dermic swords compatible for it. Level 4 Illumination Sword formation required 36 dermic swords. Furthermore, if he wanted to set up the formation successfully, the weight, length and shape of the 36 dermic swords had to be similar. Su Zimo did not know how to refine dermic weapons.
It was absolutely impossible for him to gather 36 similar dermic swords.
Therefore, his illumination sword formation was already set aside after he entered nascent soul realm. The further the sword formation progressed, the more flying swords were required. At level 9, a total of 81 flying swords were required. Although the might of the illumination sword formation was shocking, it had not been passed down. Even among ancient array sect cultivators, not many would be able to recognize it. That was one of the reasons. Since he had nothing to do, Su Zimo went to the sand table to watch the formation battle. About 4 hours later, the result was out. In the end, Perfected Lord Yanbai of Ancient Array Sect won. Perfected Lord Yanbai laid down a massive formation and trapped more than 100 formation masters in succession. None of them managed to escape. It was a dazzling achievement.
Grant the tea. Dao Lord Lan Yu smiled and waved her hand gently.
A tender green tea leaf at the top of the mystic tea tree floated down and landed in the teacup. The elder beside her retrieved fresh spring water and boiled it with dermic powers, turning it into a ball of water that rolled into the teacup.
Xing!
The fragrance of tea spread rapidly, making one feel relaxed.
Given that effect just by smelling the fragrance of the tea from afar, one could tell how precious the supreme-grade mystic tea was.
The 1,000 Crane Sect elder brewed the tea personally and sent it over. Perfected Lord Yanbai was overwhelmed by the favor and received the supreme-grade mystic tea. He looked at the jade green tea and gulped it down with complete disregard of its heat. The moment the tea entered his stomach, Perfected Lord Yanbai shuddered and sat down cross-legged, closing his eyes. He started cultivating and meditating instantly. Ancient Array Sect cultivators hurried over and huddled around to protect him from being disturbed. After that was the competition for elixir refinement. All the elixir refinement masters in the Middle Continent could take part in the challenge. An Elixir Yang Sect cultivator would be the one to welcome the challenges. The elixir refinement master that Elixir Yang Sect sent out was none other than Tang Yu, who liked to dress up as a man and had crossed paths with Su Zimo's group in the ancient battlefield. It was thanks to Tang Yu's recommendation that Xiaoning and Jicheng Tian were able to join Elixir Yang Sect back then. After so many years, Tang Yu was still the same as before. Dressed as a pale-faced scholar, she looked like a handsome young master from afar. Su Zimo could not help but think of Xiaoning. If Xiaoning was still around, she would have a chance to fight for the title of a great elixir refinement master given her attainments in elixir refinement. Su Zimo told himself quietly. The duration of the elixir refinement competition was shorter, and the outcome was determined within 2 hours. As expected, Tang Yu had obtained the title of Great Elixir Refinement Master.
Grant the tea.
Without hesitation, Dao Lord Lan Yu plucked another leaf from the tip of the illumination tea tree. The 1,000 Crane Sect elder brewed the supreme-grade mystic tea and sent it over.
In the blink of an eye, the third round, the talisman battle, was about to begin.
This time round, 1,000 Crane Sect was the host and naturally could not afford to lose. The cultivator they sent was Lang Ro.
Go on.
Given your strength and talent, it should be easy for you to win the title of a great talisman master. Dao Lord Lan Yu looked at Lang Ro and nodded with a smile, pleased with her disciple. Clenching her fists slightly, Lang Ro swept her gaze across Ji Qingtian, Little Fatty and Shi Jian. When she saw their encouraging gazes, she finally made up her mind.
Master!
Lang Ro arrived before Dao Lord Lan Yu and knelt down. Dao Lord Lan Yu frowned slightly. What's wrong? Get up and speak. Master, if I can obtain the title of a great talisman master, I don't need anything. I only have one request and I hope you can agree to it. Still kneeling on the ground, Lang Ro said slowly with a resolute gaze.
Perfected Lord Lan Yu seemed to have realized something and her expression darkened.
After hesitating for a long time she said, Tell me. I'm not willing to become Dao companions with Yi Tiancheng. Lang Ro said that statement word by word with a resounding conviction. The moment she said that, the crowd fell into an uproar. Chapter 936. Greeting Gift. Chapter 936. Greeting Gift. I'm not willing.
No one could imagine how much pressure Lang Ro had to endure or how difficult it was for her to say those words in front of countless paragons of various sects and factions. That short statement was even more powerful than a hysterical shout. She was fighting against authority. She was defying her master's orders. Dao Lord Lan Yu's expression turned terrible as she glared at Lang Ro silently with suppressed rage. That silence was even scarier than a stern rebuke. Nobody knew what would happen next. By going against a sect master during such an important event, Lang Ro was not only going against Thousand Crane Sect, but also Dao Lord Lan Yu's personal dignity. It was also possible for Dao Lord Lan Yu to cripple Lang Ro and disavow her as a disciple in a fit of anger. On the other side, Tiancheng narrowed his eyes and glared at Lang Ro's back view with a dark expression. Now that Lang Ro rejected the marriage proposal right in front of him, he was thoroughly embarrassed. At that moment, countless cultivators were gloating internally in secret and wanted to make a joke out of him. Silence filled the mystic courtyard. Even the sound of wind vanished. The air seemed to have frozen. Right in front of Dao Lord Lan Yu's gaze, Lang Ro knelt on the ground and gritted her teeth. Enduring the immense pressure, she raised her head and looked into Dao Lord Lan Yu's eyes. Under that pressure, even her petite body trembled slightly. After a long time, Dao Lord Lan Yu spoke slowly and expressionlessly. "Take back what you said earlier on. I'll pretend that I didn't hear it." The immense pressure almost destroyed Lang Ro. Jicheng Tian stood out. Little Fatty and Shi stood out as well. The three of them arrived beside Lang Ro silently and stood shoulder to shoulder with her. As though she had received immense encouragement, Lang Ro took a deep breath and looked at Dao Lord Lan Yu, saying word by word, "I'm not willing." She refused to back down. Bloody hell! Enraged, Dao Lord Lan Yu slammed the table and stood up. The thunderous wrath of the Dharma characteristic Dao Lord was not only felt by Lang Ro, who was kneeling on the ground, but bystanders as well. Su Zimo remained silent and watched coldly from the sidelines. This was Thousand Crane Sect and there were 3 Dharma characteristic Dao Lords present. He did not dare to attack directly and start a massacre. Otherwise, not only would he die here, he would also implicate Lang Ro and the others. "Please don't be angry, Sect Master." Rower might have been confused for a moment. An elder standing beside Dao Lord Lan Yu said softly. She looked at Lang Ro and shook her head, indicating for the latter to not go against the sect master. Dao Lord Lan Yu looked at Lang Ro and recalled the interactions she had with her disciple over the years. Gradually, her gaze softened. No matter what, Lang Ro was her proudest disciple. Dao Lord Lan Yu took a deep breath and said earnestly, "Lang Ro, I know that you're unwilling, but you have to know that I'm doing this for your own good." When he heard that, Little Fatty did not have much of an expression on his face. However, he sneered internally, "For her own good? Fufu, at the end of the day, it's only for yourself and the sect. I've lived for thousands of years and I've been in the same situation before. What don't I know?" Dao Lord Lan Yu continued, "Although you don't have much feelings towards Yi Tiancheng now, as long as you two become Dao companions and stay together by one another for a long time, feelings will definitely blossom. The path of cultivation is long and arduous. It's not easy to find a Dao companion that you can spend the rest of your life with. You must cherish the opportunity before you." Little Fatty coughed gently. "Pretty sister Sect Master, that's not right. If they don't have feelings for each other, how are they going to stay together by one another?" He continued with a chuckle, "Pretty sister Sect Master, I'm going to say something that I hope you don't blame me for. Will you be willing to stay by my side right now? You can lead a horse to water but you can't make him drink." Shi finally blurted out after holding it in for a long time. "Ha ha!" Many cultivators in the crowd could not help but burst into laughter. Ru Xian could not stop giggling as well. "Those two are so interesting." "Insolent." Dao Lord Lan Yu glared at Little Fatty and did not bother with him. She then said to Lang Ro, "I know that you might have heard some rumors about a marriage alliance with Yi Tiancheng or a scheme to lure someone out. However, let me tell you, those are rumors and malicious slander." "Not necessarily." Little Fatty muttered, "There's no smoke without fire. Yi Tiancheng is ruthless and can do anything." Dao Lord Lan Yu's gaze shifted and her expression darkened. She glared at the 3 of them and said coldly, "I warned you guys not to cause trouble.
If you dare to say anything more, don't blame me for being merciless and kicking you guys out of Thousand Crane Sect. Killing intent flashed through Yi Tiancheng's eyes. With Dao Lord Lan Yu around, it wasn't appropriate for him to kill the three of them.
However, he would have no qualms the moment the three of them were tossed out of Thousand Crane Sect.
At that thought, Yi Tiancheng stood up and declared, Senior Lan Yu, the three of them clearly have ill intentions and want to cause trouble. I'm sure no one has any objections to kicking them out of the Thousand Crane Tea Party. Yi Tiancheng could no longer suppress the killing intent in his heart. His reputation had been damaged repeatedly after coming to the Thousand Crane Tea Party, and he was already fuming.
As long as Little Fatty and the other two left Thousand Crane Sect, he would find an excuse to leave the Mystic Courtyard momentarily and hunt them down personally.
Pretty sister Sect Master, look! Yi Tiancheng can't wait to make a move on us. I can guarantee that Yi Tiancheng will definitely chase after us the moment we leave this place. Little Fatty was smart enough to read Yi Tiancheng's mind. Dao Lord Lan Yu frowned slightly. She also understood that chasing the three of them out of Thousand Crane Sect was no different from killing them. However, the three of them gave her a headache. At that moment, Yi Tiancheng's gaze was dark as he glared at Lang Rou's back view with resentment. Lang Rou's rejection of the marriage proposal was a huge slap to his face. Yi Tiancheng had never suffered such humiliation. Initially, he only intended to marry Lang Rou and make her his maidservant. But now, Yi Tiancheng has changed his mind. He wanted to marry Lang Rou and torture her ruthlessly, making her suffer so much that she wanted to die and be a slave for life. At that thought, Yi Tiancheng suddenly laughed and declared, Junior sister Lang Rou, don't listen to the rumors. My sincerity towards you can be verified by heaven and earth. Upon hearing that, Dao Lord Lan Yu was extremely pleased and nodded with a smile. Yi Tiancheng continued, I have some ties with Ming Han of Hellfire Hall, and he has already promised me that if he manages to refine a Khanate perfected Lord Dermic weapon in this weapon refinement battle, he will give it to me. As for this Khanate Dermic weapon, I'll give it to you in hopes of expressing my sincerity. Of course, this is just a small greeting gift. The crowd was in an uproar. A gift of a Khanate Dermic weapon was a shocking extravagance. Most of the female cultivators present revealed looks of envy. Yi Tiancheng was an unprecedented paragon who was handsome and elegant with unlimited potential in the future to begin with. Now that he was gifting a Khanate Dermic weapon as a greeting gift, who could reject him? Dao Lord Lan Yu looked at Yi Tiancheng and nodded in satisfaction before turning to Lang Rou to persuade her. You heard it as well. Yi Tiancheng is a decent child and he's truly sincere towards you. He's even giving away a Khanate Dermic weapon just like that. Phew! Right then, another sneer sounded from the crowd, filled with mockery. Chapter 937. Too Sincere. Chapter 937. Too Sincere. Who was the person laughing? The cultivators were shocked. Dao Lord Lan Yu had just finished speaking, and someone actually dared to laugh in such a manner. This was a challenge to the dignity of a Dharma characteristic Dao Lord and the master of a sect. All the cultivators turned towards 100 Refinement Sect. At that moment, Nangong Ling and the other two were so scared that their hearts were about to jump out. What is little Granduncle Master doing? Nangong Ling and the other two could naturally tell that the mocking laughter earlier on came from Su Zimo, who was sitting beside them. Little Granduncle Master, this is a matter of Thousand Crane Sect. You're not going to stand out, are you? Ru Xian hurriedly sent a voice transmission to remind Su Zimo. Nangong Ling was also scared out of his wits as he sent a voice transmission. Little Granduncle Master, don't be rash. Fairy Lang Rou is indeed devastatingly beautiful, but you have to sober up and not be so reckless. All three of them could tell that no one would be able to help Lang Rou if Dao Lord Lan Yu did not relent. Furthermore, there was a top of the phenomenon ranking and #1 perfected lord watching by the side. Anybody that stood out now would not only be offending the sect master of Thousand Crane Sect, but also Yi Tiancheng. Who would be able to withstand that? Right then, Dao Lord Lan Yu looked over. Nangong Ling and the other two felt their hearts skip a beat and hurriedly retracted their spirit consciousnesses, not daring to send any more voice transmissions. The three of them looked at Su Zimo nervously and shook their heads repeatedly. Su Zimo had a calm expression and merely smiled at the three of them. However, he had no intention of retreating. Even against Dharma characteristic Tao lords, he had to step forward. That was because Lung Ro, Little Fatty and the others could no longer withstand the double pressure from a sect master and Yi Tiancheng.
He was the only one who could shoulder this.
What are you laughing at? Tao Lord Lan Yu asked slowly. Behind her calm voice was a volcano that was about to erupt. Against the might of a Dharma characteristic Tao Lord, Su Zimo smiled with a composed expression. Everyone knows that even the top weapon refinement masters can't guarantee that they can refine connate dharmic weapon. Someone made an empty promise to something that is uncertain. What a good plan. The cultivators gradually came to their senses when they heard that. It was unknown whether Ming Han could refine a connate perfected Lord dharmic weapon. In other words, the promise that Yi Tiancheng made earlier on was most likely nothing more than a fleeting dream. Little Fatty slapped his forehead and said in realization, Sister Lung Ro, that lad Yi Tiancheng is up to no good. He's way too scheming. If that's the case, I can do it too. Naturally, Little Fatty wanted nothing more than to see the world in chaos. He surveyed his surroundings and declared loudly, It's time for a blind date. Anyone who wants to be my Tao companion will be given a connate dharmic treasure as a greeting gift when I discover any grand tombs in the future. Ha 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 ha. Everyone burst into laughter. Little Fatty was even more ridiculous. He had even promised a dharmic treasure that only a Mahayana patriarch could use. Furthermore, it was a connate dharma treasure. Yi Tiancheng's gaze was dark. Although he was still smiling, his heart was filled with killing intent. His gaze swept past Su Zimo. Just because of that question, Su Zimo was now someone he had to kill. Sensing the suspicious gazes around him, Yi Tiancheng pretended to be carefree and laughed. Don't worry, Leng Ro. If Ming Han can't refine a connate perfected Lord dharmic weapon, I'll definitely find one for you in the future and give it to you. You have my word on that. All right. Tao Lord Lan Yu nodded. I'm relieved that you made that promise. The doubtful gazes and voices gradually faded. Given Yi Tiancheng's reputation, status and position, I believe that he won't go back on his word on a promise like that. Perfected Lord Lan Yu surveyed her surroundings and rested her gaze on Su Zimo for a moment before saying slowly, If anyone has any more doubts, it will just be their pettiness at work. Her tone was heavy and it was clear that she was warning Su Zimo. As though he could not tell, Su Zimo chuckled and asked indifferently, Since you want to give a connate perfected Lord dharmic weapon, why wait till the future? Yi Tiancheng, given your reputation, status and position, it can't be possible that you don't even have a single connate perfected Lord dharmic weapon in your possession, right? Everyone was secretly impressed. That statement was no less than a divine weapon, and it was almost as though perfected Lord Lan Yu's words were returned to Yi Tiancheng. Furthermore, it sealed his escape route. Everyone knew that Yi Tiancheng was the #1 of the phenomenon ranking, and was known as the #1 perfected lord. With a behemoth like Chaos Essence Sect backing him, there was no way he did not have a connate perfected Lord dharmic weapon. However, possessing one was one thing. Giving it away was another. There were many paragons present. Which of them would be willing to give away a connate perfected Lord dharmic weapon if they had one right now? Yi Tiancheng could no longer pretend as his expression darkened. Su Zimo smiled and asked again, why? You can't bear to? It was a simple question, but Yi Tiancheng felt so terrible that he wanted to vomit blood. He could not answer. If he said he was willing, he would have to take it out right now. If he said that he could not bear to part with it, where would his sincerity be then? That promise earlier would become nothing but a joke as well. Yi Tiancheng stood up slowly and no longer hid the killing intent in his heart. He released a tremendous might and asked coldly, Who are you? Everyone could tell that Yi Tiancheng was losing control. In truth, it was not just Yi Tiancheng. Even Tao Lord Lan Yu was feeling restless. Right now, she really wanted to chase that green-robed cultivator of 100 refinement sect out. However, to her dismay, the green-robed cultivator did not do anything out of line the entire time and she could not find a reason for it. Su Zimo ignored Yi Tiancheng's threat and turned to look at Tao Lord Lan Yu. Let's take a step back. Even if he can take out a connate perfected Lord dharmic weapon, what does it prove? Can it prove that he's true towards Lang Ro? Or can it prove that he's honest and has no ulterior motives? Perfected Lord Lan Yu said slowly, at the very least, it can prove Yi Tiancheng's sincerity and prove that he's qualified and worthy of my disciple. Ha ha! Su Zimo burst into laughter and slapped his storage bag, retrieving a cold long sword. Buzz! The sword quivered and released 6 bedazzling lights with a domineering sword chi. 6 dermic patterns, a connate perfected Lord dermic weapon. How rare are connate perfected Lord dermic weapons? Su Zimo placed the sword on the tea table beside him casually and said with indifference, I can give this sword to Lang Ro right now. Will it prove my sincerity and prove that I'm qualified? The crowd was in an uproar and everyone was excited, waiting to watch the show. What was going on? Someone was fighting for the marriage with Yi Tiancheng. Furthermore, this action was a merciless slap to Yi Tiancheng's face. The situation was getting more complicated. Even though little Fatty did not know who that green-robed cultivator was, he was grinning from ear to ear as he remarked hurriedly, Man bro, you're way too sincere. Some people haven't even shown a single thing despite their claims the entire time. Unlike you, you're truly straightforward. I'm definitely going to befriend you. Little Fatty gave Su Zimo a thumbs up and did not forget to mock Yi Tiancheng. Yi Tiancheng stood at the side, his face alternating between shades of green and purple as his lungs nearly exploded from anger. You're tuning in to the Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.